So in this video, we're going to go over my marketing process, like the philosophy behind it and everything. I've had a ton of people ask me about it, about the results we've been getting, how we've been increasing conversions 5 times, cutting lead costs, getting really high average order values, having show up rates at 85 to 90%, and literally closing millions of dollars from investors to, driving 100 leads in the first day of campaign launches that are all profitable. And there's not really a way to break it down into one simple step. So you're not going to believe the individual processes, and it's going to be really hard to understand the processes unless you actually understand how the whole entire thing works. So I'm going to walk through each one of my steps, and I'm going to go from philosophy. I'm going to go through funnel structures, through copywriting basics, through the mindset, through diving into the actual understanding of how to target your avatar, to media buying, to the structure of media buying, the whole stack, the whole process that we have found that makes us really successful. The cool thing with this is it's totally offer independent, right? So a lot of marketers out there only do lead gen. A lot of marketers out there only do e-com. A lot of marketers specialize in one vertical. We are kind of a unicorn that specializes in a lot of different verticals, which has given us a wide array of just different client results and different understandings of how the marketing process works. I've been doing this for 10 years. I have some really, really, really successful partners. I've had some amazing mentors that have leaned into me, and I'm just going to share with you everything that they've given me over the past few years, or 10 years, I guess. So starting with the marketing philosophy, right? Everybody wants to know, like, where do you start? And I read a book, I did this, and it's like, yeah, that's cool. It's probably not going to work as well because you don't really understand your starting point. So I want to break down the marketing mindset. The marketing mindset comes into this understanding that marketing is just a best guess in time. So until you have data behind it, all you're doing is making assumptions. And it's one of the only industries that really allows you to make assumptions and just be wrong. Like, that's the best part about marketing. You can fail, you can fuck up, you can be wrong, you can do things wrong. It's trial and error as long as you have the economics to support it. That comes to the second part of the marketing basics and philosophy. The economics of your offer, the economics of how you drive things, the economics of your business have to be so sound that you're not competing on marketing, but you're actually competing on the economics. And what do I mean by the economics of marketing? It's a weird dynamic, right? Everybody thinks of marketing as behavioral psychology only, or discounts, or cost of acquisition, or cost per lead, or click-through cost, or CPMs. All these different data points are an individual expression of the actual economics of each one of the offers. And if you understand each part of the data points, if you understand each part of the conversion cycle, if you understand each part of the average order value, expected values of conversion rates, you can start to build this really cool financial model. Because at the end of the day, one of our main business model is raising money through accredited investors for investment funds. And my goal isn't necessarily just to raise them $100 million in the shortest window possible. My goal is to create an economic engine where they can predictably raise a certain amount of money based on a math formula, which takes the behavioral part of marketing, takes the psychology of marketing, combines it with the math of marketing and the economics of the business, and creates a profitable offer structure. So there's a couple different ways that you can go about this. One of them is going to be the high ticket method. So the high ticket method is going to really matter on a couple of different metrics. So with the high ticket method, we're in a weird market cycle. So market cycles last about 5 years, and you'll see an oscillation between the high ticket sales and low ticket sales. You'll see a lot of markets a couple years, 3 years ago, we were in a high ticket sale, right? So you saw all these high ticket coaches popping up. High ticket was crushing it. If you had some bit of an expertise, it was overproduced cinematic ad, goes to a long form VSL, goes to a long form landing page, goes to a call booking, goes right into a close. We were in this crazy abundant economic cycle, and you had a lot of coaches that were able to stand up these offers. The kind of twofold problem happened on the backside of that. About 3 years into it was a lot of people started getting burnt because the coaches that were positioning themselves as experts weren't actually coaches. So there was a massive lack of trust in the coaching community. And we started to see a little bit of an economic drawdown. So people were a little bit less flexible with their pricing, and you had a little bit more a little bit less price elasticity. And when price elasticity decreases, the low ticket offers really seem to work. But low ticket doesn't work unless you have the right economics and unless you have something really, really valuable. Which brings us to our third part of the marketing philosophy, which is the value equilibrium. I haven't really heard anybody talk about this, but I've established it actually through relationships with people. So I look at value equilibrium as every time that I have an interaction with someone, there's either a positive value add or a diminishment of value. So if I ask for an email address, that's a value reduction. If I give you a really good piece of valuable content, that's a value add. If I give you a valuable piece of content that is delivered in a way that you do not consume it, that's on me, not on you. And I've taken away value from you. So I'm at a value disequilibrium. So one of the problems that we see in the high ticket coaching space is it's a lot of takes before true value is given. So you have these ads that have these curiosity builders and everybody tries to play on this dynamic of curiosity. And oh man, if you just knew this secret, if you just knew this contrarian method, if you just knew this special secret sauce, your world would be so much better. Sure, right? Cool. That's a great story. But the problem with that is they watch your ad. There's little to no value because it's just this like basic bullshit of hypothesis and some mysterious conceptualization that doesn't really deliver any value that they can actually take and use. It does get them to click through to your landing page, right? So that's a value reduction. Now they watch your sales video, and let's say it's 5 minutes. That's a short VSL. 3 to 5 minutes is a great short punchy VSL. Gets a pretty good watch time. You get a massive watch time to about the 2 minute mark with about 2 minute point with about 75% watch rates. You start to see a drop off after the next 2 minutes. And by minute 4, you're at like a 35% drop rate. And if you really hold them in and you don't move to a close too quickly, then you'll see about a 25% watch rate at the end. Now, I just recorded a hour-long podcast style VSL about 6 hours ago with Brody Kern, and it was a full hour long, but we peeled back the curtain on his entire process. The reason we did that is because we gave value the whole time. So watch rates will hold the entire time, right? And now when watch rates hold the entire time and we're delivering pieces, like if someone watches that video, they should grab a fucking notepad and they should write down every single point we talk about and they should try to integrate it themselves. And then as they find the pieces and parts that they can integrate, then they can figure out if they need to work with him or not. That's a very valuable video sales letter. And most coaches leave this like breadcrumby bullshit that is, if you just, okay, so you're going to do step 1 and it's this like trifecta of certainty. And then you're going to do step number 2 and it's this like ethereal bullshit. And then step number 3, you like do this weird fucking jungle dance and go in the woods and rub oil on your nipples, right? It's like they don't give you these fucking steps. They just give you these like really weird trickery names because people have got good at naming conventions, or they, use chat GPT until their fingers fucking bleed. Like, great, you came up with a cool name. That's not that hard. But when you do that, you've had them watch an ad that didn't deliver value. You've had them watch a VSL that didn't deliver value. Now they're a minimum of 6 minutes in if they've watched the whole video and the whole ad with no value. Now you're asking them for an opt-in. Then you're asking them for an application fill. Then you're asking them to book a call with you on a calendar. Okay. What do you think conversions are going to be like? You've had 5 to 6 points where you could have given value, and instead you've taken value. Now they get on a sales call with you, and you have your little 6-step fucking sales process that's witchcrafty and hides a bunch of shit, and like you're kind of shady through it, and you're like, oh man, if you just knew what you could do, take out a pen and paper, let's check out like how much it's going to cost you. If you don't do this now, do you want to close with me? Right? That's a 30, 45-minute sales call, super typical. Probably not going to be super high close rate, right? Not like, who wants to come in and pay for that? They've wasted so much fucking time with you. Who really wants to come in and do that? Not many people. I know I don't. I want value throughout the process because I can implement things. And if you give me the steps that I need to do, I can make my own decision as to whether or not I want to implement it. That's what I mean by value equilibrium. And I like to explain that in a very thorough way because most marketers and business owners don't truly understand the transactional process of value delivery. If you understand the thesis, if you understand the premise of value equilibrium, you're going to be so much better off as a marketer. You're going to be so much better off as an entrepreneur, and you're actually going to have really, really, really high conversion rates. For example, our conversion rates on landing pages as an industry standard for a lead, a long form sales page opt-in is about 3%. Ours are 12%. Our watch rates hold at about a 2x higher for video sales letters than anyone else's that I've ever come across. Our ads, our lead cost is generally about half of industry average. Click-through rates, everything's really good. And then we actually see a 75 to 85% show-up rate on the calendar because we deliver a shitload of value in every one of our email sequences. And I like to write long copy. People say they have a short attention span. Everyone out there's telling you your copy can't be long, has to grab attention. That's only if you suck at writing copy because you're not intentional about it, right? So you're just pumping out volumes, again, through AI tools and whatever, and it's generic and it doesn't sound like you and it doesn't have your voice, and it's a really shitty process. So those three pieces are the foundation of the marketing philosophy that make you successful. The marketing mindset, that is the best guess in time, and well, fuck it. You just got to try it, right? You just got to go for it. The second piece is competing on economics and not marketing. Because without the financial engine, without the math, without the formulas, it's just going to fail long-term and you're not going to be able to scale. Even if you get a little bit of traction in the beginning, you're not going to scale long-term. It's just how it goes. And then the third piece is the value equilibrium. So that is the foundation before you ever fucking pick up a pen, before you ever type something on your computer, before you ever determine what your offer, avatar, any of that shit is going to be. Those pieces are hypercritical to making sure that you have the foundation for success. Going into the second part is where you try to find offer market fit. And there's a 3-step process to do this that works every single time. I've done this over 100 times. Almost all of our funnels convert around, within the first month, they're profitable. We definitely lose money on funnels. Don't get me wrong. When we scale, when Facebook comes out with a new thing, we will lose money. I would be a fucking liar if I told you that we didn't lose money on some funnels. But most of our funnels are profitable because we do this whole front end system. So the 3-step process is 1, determining what your offer should look like, determining who you're going to serve, and then determining the ways you're going to serve them. The first step, when you go into the actual offer format, and I like to start with the offer format, even though it's really the third step, I like to bring it first because you need a basic framework for how you're going to help people to architect the situation of who you're going to help and how you're going to help them. So you do the what, the who, and the how, and then you go back to the what to make sure there's actual alignment throughout. So it really ends up being a 4-step process. You just redo the first part over. When you go into the offer, one of the most important pieces to make sure that you have in place is scalability. I see a ton of coaches come out just like ready to sell their time. They got to get to 10K a month. They got to get to 20K a month in recurring revenue. They sell off all their time. They make this offer that isn't super, super, super valuable without them, right? So we call that the X factor. And that's not my term. That's an Alan Sultanic term. The X factor is you, and you can sell the shit out of you, but I've seen plenty coaches that are so tired of selling themselves and whoring themselves out for money that they just shut everything down. And you can do it. You can whore yourself out for 3 years for sure, and you can make 300 grand a year or 300 grand a month. You can get to some pretty big numbers, and you can flex with your Lambo and your AP watch and your nice house, and then you can fucking hate your life because you can't travel and you're on client calls all day and you can't work on the business, you can't fulfill, you can't create any scalable mechanism, and then you're just coming up with new offers because you're burnt out and you're trying to scale. And at the end of the day, the market knows you're trying to scale. Like, you've seen those coaches who are just building and burning offers, right? And if you're an actual marketer, you understand the fundamental intensity of building offers, which is why we charge a phenomenal amount for our offers. Like, the number one objection I get is price, because I would say we are more expensive than 95% of marketers and the other 5% that we compete with are absolutely excellent at what they do. And they are a great person to compete with, right? I love it because I get to be around a lot of them and I get to learn from a lot of them. And I hope that they get to learn from me. But coming into this offer, you got to make something scalable and you got to make something that's super valuable. And you have to make the mechanism in a format that your avatar can consume and that you can actually deliver on. So biggest piece here is you have 2 ways you can really go, or 3 ways. You can go product, you can go service, or you can go consultant. A lot of people go consultant because they think it's the easy route. And it is for the first few months until everyone in your warm market that used to be your buddy that bought from you because you kind of bullshitted your way around that you're this expert comes in to find out that you really don't know what you're doing. Maybe you got lucky. Maybe your offer just stuck. Like we've had offers that have launched and gotten, 1,000 leads the first month that are super profitable. I will be the first to tell you, we got lucky. Like we hit the timing right. We launched an offer yesterday that got 48 leads with $163 in ad spend. It had 13 application pull-throughs, which is about a 27% conversion rate through a long form portal process. And that converted into about 3K, right? I think that's like a 30-time return on ad spend. We got lucky. That's what it is. We hit the offer right. It's a super great offer. We just hit the timing right. The offer only has 300 days on it. It's going to die. And that happens. And I'm not going to go out and teach people how to run that offer in a year because the offer won't be around and the mechanics for that offer will not exist. So that's a big thing about positioning yourself as an expert. If you position yourself as an expert, you absolutely have to have the expertise to be able to deliver on that. For example, sitting with Brody, sitting with Josh Snow, sitting with Cody Jefferson, sitting with some of these guys that are elite in their industries, you understand what an actual expert looks like. You understand what Alan Sultanic does. You understand what Russell Brunson does. You understand how these guys can actually be experts and actually sell themselves as consultants or experts and truly deliver this world-class value at a very high ticket. And I've been guilty of it myself. I thought I was an expert in some areas. I would sell these really high ticket coaching things, only to realize the amount that I had to learn to deliver on what I sold was massive. And so I learned it, and that consumed a fuck ton of my time. And it was really laborious. And the offer that I thought was going to be awesome and scalable wasn't super awesome and scalable. It was really difficult. No problem. You still have to do it because you sold it. But it's something to be very wary of. The second thing is service. So when you go into the service-based industry, that can be a contractor, an electrician, that can be a funnel builder, that can be a copywriter, that can be a media buyer, it can be a video editor, that can be a number of service-based things. I'm a big fan of service-based businesses. The reason I really like service-based businesses is because you can really niche down into one expertise and become an expert in that tight niche really, really quickly. For example, you could build badass LED walls and you could become an expert in that relatively quickly. You could become a e-commerce funnel designer and just become an absolute killer at that pretty quickly. You could become a short form video editor and really study that niche just day and night for a relatively short period of time and provide a very lucrative service. And the service tends to be more scalable than the expert because you're not selling your time, right? I like that. I love that space. And it's very valuable. You get pretty good clients as long as you're positioned right. The biggest thing with a service-based business is you have to actually have the pricing fit. I can charge an insurmountable amount of money for my funnels. For example, we have a funnel that we know when we build, because we have historical metrics, can build with the right offer a $4 million revenue in the first year off recurring revenue, high ticket sales, and low ticket sales. It's a 10-step funnel. We know exactly what needs to go into it. And we have 2 different options. You can pay us $240,000 to build it and to do all the ad spend for it, or we can do a $35K fee to build everything and then 30% of profit share, which is $1.4 million. It's expensive. We also know the results that it's going to deliver. A year ago, when I started with that funnel, I charged $10,000 for it, right? Massive discrepancy in price, but I wasn't risking putting myself in a really weird position where I had absolutely no data behind what I was doing and trying to sell that. When we go into the fundraising space, we started with about half the price that we currently charge, with no performance fees or no success fees, because we didn't have any data behind it. We were testing it, which was great because clients were a lot more patient with us while we learned. Now we're a lot more expensive. Clients are a lot less patient, but we deliver a lot faster and at a lot higher caliber. That's a really important thing when you go into service-based businesses. I see too many people looking at what the market charges, not at what they're worth. And what you're worth, you're going to deal with the certain level of clientele, but to be worth more, you have to work with that client, right? So if you have three levels of client, the 3 is the guy that drives a Bentley and makes a shit ton of money and develops $1 billion in real estate. The level 2 is somebody that drives a Mercedes and develops, $1 million of real estate. And the level 1 is somebody that drives, a truck and is probably on job sites and does a couple $100,000 in real estate a year. You probably need to work with the first guy until you really get your feet wet. You can work with the expert. They're going to be a lot more demanding. And if you come in with a low price, it's going to be less harsh on their budget. They're going to be a lot less forgiving because they have a lot higher expectation of what you're going to deliver, because they know what they could pay for, and the results are going to have to come a lot faster. But it's really important to know what your pricing could be. The third is products, right? So I don't do a ton of the e-commerce space. If you want to get big into product marketing and e-com, follow Josh Snow, watch all of his shit, consume all of the content you can from him. He's an absolute fucking genius in that space. He knows it literally better than anybody I know that knows it. And he's incredible at it. So follow him. Don't come to us to build you a fucking Shopify store, because we're not going to do it. And that's not our bread and butter. But those are the 3 things you can sell, right? So that gives you your offer. That gives you your offer dynamics. Then you have to figure out what you actually want on the delivery of your offer mechanics. Are you going to deliver a course? Are you going to deliver the service? How do you perform the service? How long does it take you to perform the service? What's the guarantee of your service? Each one of the steps you have to figure out, and then you have to figure out how each one of the steps you're actually delivering value to the client. If you have too many steps that don't deliver value to the client, they're not going to receive the value exchange, and you're going to be at a lack of value. You're going to be, in the negative on the value equilibrium. And that's not a good place to be, especially after they pay you. Now you're going to go into the avatar. So who do you want to serve? I see way too many people focusing on the demographics. Like, I don't really give a shit how old they are, where they live, what language they speak is pretty important, but in what countries they live in can be pretty important. But for the most part, demographics are pretty simple. It's good to keep in the back of your mind, because certain ages are going to want and desire a certain feel, but that comes a little bit later. The biggest part you want to focus on is your avatar. So we call it the psychographics, and everybody knows this, but what are the problems they face? So what's the problem that keeps them up at night? What does that problem really look like? If you can get in their shoes, if you can lay in their bed, if you can talk to their wife, what do they feel on a day-to-day? And that can be a really big disconnect if you're not actually in their shoes. If you've never been them before, that can be really hard to figure out. Most of my clients and most of the people that we sell our clients' products and services for, it takes a while for me to get in their shoes. Now, you don't have to go on some acid trip. You don't have to go take a bunch of mushrooms. You don't have to go on this, crazy fucking plant medicine journey to figure that out and to get into their soul and whatever. You can do a lot of market research and you can figure some things out. And the easiest way to do that is to survey clients. So what I do, I have a form that asks them how they felt before they met their current service provider, or their coach or whatever, what they were looking for, who they wanted to be, what was their identity transformation? Who did they want to be after this, right? And if you're a painter, it can be simple. It can be, someone just wanted to live in a prettier house and they wanted to feel like a better housewife, so they wanted to take care of this, so they wanted to be a better husband, so they got the house painted for their wife, right? That's an identity shift. Talking about that identity shift as a painter is something that no other painters talk about. So instead of talking about the fucking colors of your wall, talk about the identity shift. Talk about the difference in the person that they're going to become. right? So it's really important to get into their shoes. And then I take that feedback form, that feedback mechanism, and I like to survey between 5 and 10 people. And then I print them out. I like to do shit by hand. You don't have to. You can do it in fucking Google or whatever. If you have your natural AI learning or, Google AI, you can fucking put it into there and look for congruencies. But I like to draw it out and circle all the words that resonate between all of the clients. Then I make a list of those words. And then I categorize those words by the problem, the pain that they feel when those problems start to extrapolate and start to build, the possibility, so who they want to become, what they want to feel, what the result is, what the transformation that they desire is, right? And then the path for them to get there. So those are the 4 steps. And the biggest part is you have to make sure they're willing to go down the path. For example, if you're a short form video editor and you're selling video content to a 65-year-old, I know I said don't really focus on the demographics, but you do want to focus on their psychographics. Is that a path they're willing to take? Or should you build an email newsletter? Probably a better idea for a little bit of an older person, right? And that's where you come down to those psychographics. So it's the problem, the pain, the possibility, and the path. And you actually want to use the words that they use, which is why the feedback form is so important. Most people don't want to do this. Just build a type form or a jot form. Fucking pay people to fill it out. Or if you actually have some clients, which you might, just ask them. Say, hey, could you fill this out? It would help me out a lot. I do it to all my clients. That's part of my onboarding process. I just slip it in my little onboarding document. It feels just like a really cool part of the process, but I'm getting we've onboarded 100 clients over the past few months. Pretty awesome. I've gotten a ton of feedback. I know the exact words to use in my marketing, which is why I get calls booked at $40 per call and other marketers get them booked at $150 a call. I know what they like. I know how they talk. I know how they feel. And before we even get on a sales call, I know the exact words to say to mirror them and to frame them and to tee them up to open them up, right? You could say that's manipulative, but everything in life is manipulative, right? If you want to get fit, you're going to manipulate your body. If you want to have a better relationship, you're going to manipulate certain things to have a better relationship. If you want to have a better business, you're in the business of manipulating money. If you're in marketing, you're in the business of manipulating minds. It's all manipulation. So fuck off with your piousness. That's for you. And then what you want to do is you really want to dive into these 11 questions. So I'm not going to give you the 11 questions here because it's going to take too long to go into. And if I gave them to you, I would be doing you the injustice of not having you read Jim Edwards' Copywriting Secrets book. Go on Amazon, order Jim Edwards' Copywriting Secrets book. It's like a funny looking book with a black cover with some purple highlights on it. And the dude's like a middle-aged white dude with like this long ass beard. It's like a white beard. Super cool guy. His book's funny as shit. But he has these 11 questions in there, and he has a ton of really valuable frameworks in there for people that are just starting out in marketing. Or if you're an expert in marketing, still read the fucking book because it's really good. You're going to find the 11 questions in there. And what you do is you type out the 11 questions in a Google Doc, and then you answer every one of the 11 questions with 10 answers, which seems egregious. Like who wants to spend the time to sit there and answer 110 questions? But I'll tell you this, if you're not willing to do the mental gymnastics to figure your avatar out that way, you don't deserve to sell to them. It's super plain and simple. If you're not willing to do that, you truly don't deserve to sell to them. So figure it out. Take the time. Do the mental gymnastics. Do the mental rework. That gives you this foundation of offer market fit, right? And now you're going back to your offer to make sure that every piece that you said you want to help them with on those 11 questions matches your avatar, matches the path and modality that they want to leverage and they want to choose in the offer workbook. That's how you get through the first 2 steps, right? So now we've covered marketing philosophy and we've covered the avatar, the market fit, and the positioning of your offer. All right, so now that you have the first 2 pieces, right? You have your marketing mindset, your marketing philosophy, you have your foundation, all the fun shit, right? That you're like diving into the psychology. And now you have your offer market fit. You truly understand how you're going to help and serve them. You've come up with your pricing matches your skill level, right? Because that's important. And then you're going to go into your funnel. The reason we're not going into copy first is because I think it's really hard to understand copy dynamics until you understand the actual funnel you're going to run. And if you're like most people, if you're a marketer, I'm going to tell you this: stick with one fucking vertical. In the beginning, I went through a ton of different verticals. I own my own businesses. I'd build a business really quickly, have like a really small exit to the business. I'm not talking like multiple millions. They were generally like, small exits to employees or little roll-ups to M&A companies. They were nothing crazy. But I liked it because I got to change industries really quickly. So I had like 3 businesses by the time I was 25. It was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. The only time I've worked for somebody was for like 6 months, which was cool. But if you're not going industry to industry and you're starting out in marketing, or if you're a business owner, you're going to really want to focus on one vertical. And if you're focusing on one vertical, you can generally focus on one funnel style. So that's why I talk about funnel before I talk about copywriting, because then once you start to get better at this and you've dialed in one funnel that converts, you can go forward, right? So we're going to go over the funnel basics. We're going to go over low ticket funnels. We're going to go over high ticket funnels. We're going to go over these really cool podcast style VSL funnels that I actually fucking love. Like I really, really, really like them. There's not a ton of people doing them. I might do a light touch on webinar funnels. I'm not a huge fan of webinars. I think you get shitty show up rates, and generally people just use them to pitch. So unless you're going to do a lot in the webinar and really give away a lot of valuable information, stay away from them. And then actually another funnel that is really, really cool are the event funnels. I personally don't do event funnels. If you want to learn about event funnels, talk to Michael Kelly at Ads and Funnels. That he's a literal fucking savant at event funnels. And I personally I book calls with Michael Kelly. It's like $500 an hour, because he's really, really good at what he does. And I love having a second set of eyes on the copy I write. He's a really cool guy, and he just crushes these high ticket event funnels. So if you want to learn event funnels, talk to him. I can give you some feedback on the rest. If you want to learn about e-com funnels, you're going to want to talk to Josh Snow. There's no like benefit for me telling you about these guys, but they are absolutely phenomenal at what they do. And then if you want to get really granular on some really big ascension funnels that I'm actually starting to love, like 10-step funnels, Alan Sultanic has the automatic client system. It's closed right now, but when you see this video, it might not be closed. Definitely check out the automatic clients. It's a badass funnel, but that's by no means should that ever be your first funnel or your third funnel or your 10th funnel. That should be like your 100th funnel. And events are pretty complex too, but they're really cool. And then we're going to go into some of like the tracking and dynamics. Then we'll go into the copy, right? Because the copy is kind of like step 4. So when we go into funnel basics, we really, really want to look at a couple of main things, right? The first thing is going to be like your color scheme, your funnel basics, right? You want to look at like what's the intention? How am I going to convey this? How much information does my market need? And the way that I look at funnel structures is I like to look at the target segment of the audience that I'm going to choose. And when I say target segment, I'm talking about awareness segments. So you have a couple different awareness segments. You have unaware. They don't know what their problem is. They don't know what the solution is. They know they have a problem. They just can't verbalize it, right? They don't, so therefore they have no idea what their solution is. They don't know about your product or service, and they haven't really gone through any like familiarization with you or their product, service, anything like that. The second step, and that's an absolutely cold market. Those are my favorite to market to because I'm good at what I do now, and that market is huge, which means it's like infinitely scalable. But, and you can that's where you make your most money. But it's a hard marketing to crack. Which is one of the reasons I say that Russell Brunson makes a big fucking mistake in telling everybody to go into a blue ocean, because you have to introduce this new market. You have to introduce this new cool thing. And it's a really good selling point for his one funnel away and all that shit. But if you're going into a blue ocean as let's picture it this way, right? A boat, it's easy to paddle a kayak. Super simple. You can go in a little lake, you can map in your little estuary or whatever, you're fine. Then you go into like the intercoastal, that if you're familiar with that, or like a little bit bigger lake, right? You can jump in your little John boat. It's pretty easy. Then you go into like a little bit bigger body of water, maybe like inshore fishing, and you got your little outboard boat. A little bit simpler, but you better know what the fuck you're doing. But like, you're not going 80 miles offshore in your boat unless you really know how to drive your boat. Like, you got to know all your shit or you're fucked. So why would you go into a blue ocean as a marketer if you don't have a big budget, you're not very good at what you do, and you're not phenomenal at copy, media buying, and all these other things? Not a good area, right? So pick something that makes the most sense for you. So that's the blue ocean. That is the unaware market, where you can introduce this brand new mechanism, like Henry Ford with the cars, right? He says, if I would have asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. They would have never told me cars. Well, then he introduced cars. Great. Was Henry Ford ever fucking broke, or was he broke when he did that? No. And he made an absolute machine. Absolute machine. How many people have come along since Henry Ford and done that? Maybe like fucking Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, like few and far in between. Few and far in between. You can go that route, but like you also should examine what those guys' lives actually looked like. You should actually examine the life of Rockefeller, of Elon, of Jobs, and decide if that's who you want to be and if you're willing to make that sacrifice, because it is going to be a fucking sacrifice. The second phase of the market is problem aware. So they know they have a problem, right? They know they have migraines. They know their house looks like shit. They know that they need to sell their house. They know that they need a realtor and they don't know how to sell their house. They know that they need a funnel, but they don't know how to build their funnel. They know that they need to run paid ads, but they don't know how to run paid ads. That group is going to be a little bit easier to sell to. Still more difficult than the rest, but a little bit easier, right? They don't know the solution to their problem. They just know they have a problem. The third is going to be solution aware. Now, solution aware knows they have a problem and they know what the solution is going to be, right? I have a beard. I know I need to trim my beard. I just need to find a product that helps me trim my beard, right? So headlines are easy. Trim your beard with this new super cool product. It's not like some brand new fucking, face stuff that I put on and it like trims my beard for me, right? It's like a robot. That'd be weird. I wouldn't understand it. It'd take a long educational cycle for me to actually feel comfortable using that when I can just like trim my beard with some fucking trimmers and it's super easy. And so that's an easier market to go to because they know the solution. The mechanism just needs to be bigger, better, faster, stronger, whatever. That's your differentiator, right? Margins are a little bit smaller. You're still kind of competing on costs unless you have this really cool new mechanism, but that's the route you go. And then the next phase is product aware. So that's the fourth phase. Product aware knows the product, right? So that's like Dove, that's like Nike, that's some of these big companies, that's Tesla, that's name brand car companies. It's easy to market those companies. It's hard to break into them, right? So it's very brand heavy, just building brand awareness. That is Alex Hormozi. They have a big name. People know who they are. They know their products. They know their services, and you just have to sell them. It's a good place to start though, because you start to learn some like high volume metrics and dynamics. It's just really hard to land those clients. Then you have the most aware. And I like to think of the most aware, this last phase, is like people who have watched your long form VSL, they booked a call with you and they've been on the call with you, or they've abandoned their cart. They've gone through the process. They bought your shit. Like at some point they know the product exists. They bought it. They've gotten really, really close to the end. Those are the 5 steps. And I say that because you need to go into your funnel philosophy with those steps in mind. If you're going after someone who already knows of your product, it could be a smaller market, but the funnel could be way simpler. Pretty easy funnel to build. Going back to solution aware, it needs to be a little bit more complex because you're going to have to understand your explain your new mechanism, how it's bigger, how it's better, how it's faster, how it's stronger. Good example for this is Skin Condoms just came out with a new like luxury condom that's like $100 for a pack. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool for a $100 pack of condoms, like bigger, better, faster, stronger, right? Or I guess in this case, thinner, more sensitivity and more expensive. But great, like they know their avatar. They're going where no one else has gone before. They're going into this like very high ticket condom, and literally I posted the story and myself and like 10 other people I know bought them because why the fuck not, right? It's just like I mean, maybe you use condoms, maybe you don't. That's your game. But it's a fun product, right? So funnel can be a little bit simpler. You just got to talk about bigger, better, faster, stronger. And then when you go into problem aware, right? You start when you go into product aware, when you go into solution aware, You're making claims again. You're having to introduce the product. You're having to go a little bit farther with that, a little bit more complex funnel. When you go into problem aware, you start getting into a little bit more long form, a little bit more detailed. Your copywriting style has to be a little bit more on point. And when you're going to unaware, dude, your funnel better fucking be on point. And honestly, if you're going to an unaware market, this is where a lot of high ticket coaches are fucking up right now. They're treating cold markets like they will just book a call with them, which is like just insane to me that someone thinks they can sell to an absolutely cold market. The reason high ticket coaches worked is people knew they had their little circle, and then they generally don't serve them well enough, and then that circle churns out. And then when the circle churns out, they're grabbing for cash, looking for new people, treating a very cold market like it's a warm market that they've sold to before, because they don't understand the dynamics of the social presence they built online and the fact that they have to expand past that 100,000 followers. You got to remember, like, Facebook ad markets aren't scalable unless it has an 800,000 audience. So your audience isn't scalable. Your organic audience isn't scalable unless you have 800,000 in your audience. Then at that point, you can treat a warm market like a semi-cold market, or you can treat your warm market like a scalable market. I say that because now you're thinking about the structure and the philosophy behind how you choose your funnel. Russell Brunson's little book, it's like the 27 funnel templates or something like that, or it's a bunch of funnel templates. It's pretty decent. It walks you through a bunch of different funnel structures. I don't love them, but I do like some of the principles of them. But it gets you thinking, right? So we're going to go with we'll start with the low ticket funnel, because that's going to be who you're selling to, the least aware market. And I like to, instead of going in reverse, I want to go the normal way because it's easier for my brain to think that way. But we'll start with the low ticket ascension model. So the low ticket ascension model, that funnel is going to be the most complex. It's going to have the most automations. It's going to have the most steps. It's going to require the most cohesive design, and it's going to require the most compelling copy. The reason it's going to require, and it's probably going to require like 3 VSLs. So only do it if you're really good on camera, or if the person you're selling for is really good on camera, because if they suck on camera, it's going to be hard to shoot a bunch of really good content around it. And honestly, like, if you really want to swipe some of these things, and if you want to look at it, Josh and I recommended this to me. Go to ClickBank, register for it. Go to Digistore 24, register for Digistore 24. And if you can get access to Square Dance, go to Square Dance. And then you're going to filter the products and services that they have on there by conversion rates. So you want the highest converting at the top. And then you're going to look at the landing pages. And that's going to give you a good idea of how these funnels convert and what a high converting funnel looks like, because they have the highest conversion rates. And I mean, these high conversion rates are like 8%. So remember that. Like, people think their funnel should convert at 90%, which is fucking insane to me. You should be at like a 10%. Like we convert our funnels between 10 to 12%. That's where we like to be. Industry averages are like 3%. If you're under 3%, something's broken. If you're at 3%, you can generally optimize with some conversion rate optimization up to like 12%, which we'll get into later. But the low ticket ascension models, I'm a big fan of building these in Go High Level, because ClickFunnels sucks now. It's the fucking worst platform. Like, we do not scale funnels on ClickFunnels because for some reason, every time we try to scale, there's something in it that just like fucking breaks, and our CPM gets crazy high. Like, our CPMs are like $300 versus like 30, right? So it's 10x higher. I don't know why. This is a recent development, but we're very bullish on GHL. And if you're not bullish on GHL, I don't know. You probably should be, because it's really good, especially if you're an agency owner. So that's your low ticket funnel starts with your low ticket offer, right? It's going to be a long form funnel. And in Jim Edwards' book, in Copywriting Secrets, he has a 13-step system that works really, really, really well. I'll try to remember it. So step 1 is your headline package. That's your pre-header, your headline, and your subheadline. Step 2 is a shocking statement. Did you know? Can you believe this? Like, whatever, that's a little bit below the fold. And above the fold is the first thing you see on your screen, right? So that's your most important part of your funnel. Like, above the fold is the most important part. And generally, through conversion rate optimization above the fold, you can increase conversion rates 2 to 3 times. So I know this is a lot of information. It's a little bit scattered. That's okay. You'll get it. By the end, it'll all make sense because we're going to wrap it in a pretty fucking bow for you. But, and not that there's no bow, there's nothing to sell you. It's just going to be a really cool bow that makes you feel really good inside because you understand everything now. So when you go into the low ticket model, you have your your headline package, pre-header, headline, subheadline. You have your shocking statement. You go into the problem, right? The problem that they face. You go into agitating the problem. So you want to bring them through the desert, as Jim Edwards calls, right? Because then after you introduce the problem and you agitate the problem, you're going to solve the problem. So you've brought them through the desert. Their mouth is dry. They're thirsty. They're sweating. It's hard. You're going to offer them a refreshing drink of ice water, which is the solution, right? Super simple. That's your first 5 steps. Then you're going to go into arousing curiosity bullets. The structure for the bullet should be feature benefit meeting. So if I'm selling a torque wrench, the feature is a titanium torque wrench. The benefit is that you can fix all the things around the house, which means your wife is going to love you and want to bang you later, right? That's feature benefit meeting. I've extrapolated a feature into a feeling, which feels really good. You like to use about 6 to 8 of those. That's step number 6, and then you're going to go into credibility. So this is the first time you fucking introduce yourself. Do not say at top of funnel, hey, I'm Max Mays. I'm the coolest guy in the fucking world. I'm going to sell you this product. No. Step number 7 is credibility. Give a backstory. Only give a backstory that's relevant to what you're selling. People want to go on this dissertation about where they went to college, how many girls they banged, and who they're married to. That does not matter at all, like at all. After your credibility, you're going to go into your proof. That's step 8. So proof, what I like, most people if you're listening to this, there's a good chance you don't have a fuck ton of testimonials. If you do, and you should be listening to this because I'm just going to make you better. If you do have a lot of testimonials, great place to plug in testimonials. But do not use bullshit testimonials because you're, I guess karmic debt or whatever the fuck you want to call it. But it's just bullshit. So if you're looking for proof, then what I like to do is I pull data and charts about the economics of the space we're in, or how people feel, or, what the change in the market is, and all of that. So that's the 8th. And then you're going to go into a summary of your offer, right? Which breaks down everything you've led up to beforehand. There's your 9 steps out of 13. Then you're going to go to a bonus section, and pot sweeteners, as Jim calls it, where you're like sweetening the pot. Maybe you're throwing in some free things, maybe you're doing free estimates or whatever. You're doing these little calculators for people, right? So that's the 10 steps. And then you go to call to action. And then you go to call to action. And then you go to guarantees, which takes away any risk, right? Or it's guaranteed, then call to action. So think of this. Call to action is step fucking 12. Most people like to jam a call to action down someone's throat above the fold. And why? They don't even know who the fuck you are. Why would you try to jam that down their throat? Don't do that. That's dumb. It feels too salesy. Be patient. Milk the pot, right? Warm the girl up before you, do your stuff. Go do dinner and some fun stuff like that. So, warm the girl up. Make her feel good. Make her desire you. Show some effort. Give some space. Let her come to you. Let them come down the sales page. Do this little dance with them. Step 12 is your call to action. Step 13 is your postscript. Your postscript is basically if you don't make this decision now, you're probably never going to make this decision, which means you're probably going to stay fucking stuck and da-da-da-da, right? I like to end my postscripts a little bit aggressively. A lot of people don't like to end them aggressively, but those are the 13 steps that Jim Edwards offers you. I'm not going to reiterate them because that was a miracle that I made it through. But go to his book, find the 13 steps. He outlines it in a really, really, really incredible way. Like I said, this book should take you 2 hours to read. Unless you're a dummy, then it'll take you 4 hours to read. But if you're not a dummy, you should be able to get through it quickly. And you're not a dummy because you're listening to this video. So you're starting to understand the philosophy. And as we go, you're going to understand the philosophy more and more. Right? So we're 3 steps in to this marketing process, and you're starting to probably understand my philosophy and why I don't just make short form content that tries to rip this down into a 30-second clip to get clicks and sell you shit. There's a thesis behind this. There's a process behind this. So that's your low ticket funnel, right? And that's your landing page. And then you're going to go into your order page. Pretty simple, your order checkout, like that's an easy template. I like to do OTOs, one-time offers, order add-ons, order bumps, make sure they're actually valuable, and make sure you've provided a lot of value on how you actually handle their problem on the landing page. And I like to do that in the feature benefit meeting, and then in the summary, I really get detailed into my mechanisms because I peel back the curtains of exactly how to do it. Or if I'm selling a book, I'll put the information of what page they're going to find certain things in the book on, right? Because then it's like, oh, you actually wrote the book. There's actually shit in here that I'm going to find valuable. So I like to do that. And then what I do is I go into, and then what I do is I go into, let's talk about like the high ticket funnels, right? So high ticket funnels have a couple different models. You understand the low tickets. The biggest thing with low ticket is making sure the economics works. As Alan Sultanic says, if you want to become the apex predator in your industry, you have to be able to afford the highest average order value. You don't want to compete racing to the bottom on the cheapest clicks. You want to compete on paying the most for the customer, which means your average order value needs to be high enough to pay the most. The way you figure this out is, and there's plenty of places you can find this online, but we want to see an average conversion rate of 15% of your traffic on the landing page. If we can get 15% of the traffic on your landing page, if it's a badass landing page, you should get 15%. If you're decent, it should be 10%, 8 to 10%, that are actually going to convert into your sale, right? So you need to figure out how much your cost per click is going to be, and then you can start to build out your conversion. So let's say your cost per click is $5 and you have 100 clicks, that should be $500 for those clicks. If you have a 10% conversion rate, right, that's going to be 50, or that's going to be 10 purchasers. If you're charging $27, that's going to be $270. You're in the red, right? That's not good. Now, if you do $27 and then your one-time offer is $100 and you have a 50% conversion rate on that of everybody that checks out, you should have 5 people that buy that. If that's $100, that's an extra $500. But you look at that as an expected value, which is like you have 100% of your first part, which is the $27, and then you add the 50% of the $100, which is your OTO. So it's conversion rate times revenue, which creates your expected value. You add that on. Now you have a $77 average order value, which means you can pay if you're getting 10% conversion on a $5 cost per click, you're paying $50. Now you're profitable. This is why economics are so important. And a lot of people don't realize that, so they don't even know how to run a profitable offer. So make sure you do that. That's your low ticket funnel. That wraps it up in a bow. I'm going to go into more ads like later, but for the low ticket, just to touch on this quickly, the easiest way to pull low ticket ads and make them convert high is to leverage the headline from your actual sales page, put it in an image ad, put the image of the actual product in there, and that's going to give you a much higher conversion rate and a much lower bounce rate. If your bounce rate is too high, which means users leave your page in like a very short period of time, Facebook begins to penalize you. So you want to make sure that doesn't happen. This is just a quick primer on that. We'll get deeper into it later. But there's your low ticket. Super simple, super straightforward. Now you go into your VSL funnel. And your VSL funnel is going to be a longer form funnel. I still follow the 13-step thing, right? If you're selling a service, like sometimes it can be a little stickier to get into the pricing and like summing things up and giving them price. You may or may not want to do that. There's a lot of riffraff going on right now of like, do you give them the price? Do you not give them the price? Do you hide it till the sales call? Do you not hide it during the sale until the sales call? Alan Sultanic's very upfront with this pricing. I tend to wait to deliver my pricing until they get on the call with me because I sell pretty complex services. And if I just put the price on there, it would be really, really hard for them to understand how much it's actually worth because I haven't been able to talk to them. But the VSL funnel is generally going to be a longer form VSL at the top. The short or the low or the average, the low ticket offer also has a VSL, but it can be a little bit shorter. Again, Digistore, ClickBank, SquareUp, or Square Dance, all of those are going to give you really good ideas for what those landing pages look like for a little bit low ticket offer and what the VSLs feel like. Some of them do really long VSLs, but the VSL is basically the whole entire funnel. So Now you have the low ticket going to the high ticket. You have your VSL, which is generally 5 to 20 minutes. You can do a podcast. I really like to peel back the curtains on exactly what they're going to get, because when I run the ad of the headline of the landing page with a little video of it. And then in the ad copy on Facebook, I put timestamps of what they can see at the certain timestamps, which actually increases conversion for them to go all the way through. And then the high ticket funnel really should be emotionally compelling. So people get this mistaken. They say that people only buy on emotion, but actually what people do is they buy on emotion if they have logic to support it. So logic should be your primary driver, which is good for me. I'm pretty logical. And I'm kind of not super emotional, but I know how to trigger some emotional responses. So rely on logic, because people are going to support their emotional decisions with logic, and then use emotion as the support for the logic. A lot of coaches out there go really fucking hard on emotion without logic, and you just pull in desperate people. If you want to pull in qualified prospects that are actually going to be able to afford your high ticket funnel or your high ticket service, then you need to go on logic so they can support it, right? Like, for example, the Rolls-Royce, Ogilvy wrote, David Ogilvy, like, look him up. There's a like swipefileco.com or something like that, has a bunch of Ogilvy ads on it, where you can get the letters by Ogilvy or Ogilvy on or not letters on Ogilvy. You can get Ogilvy on advertising and read a bunch of his shit, and it's really good. He sold a bunch of really expensive things, and I love him because I sell a lot of expensive things. So the copy resonates, but he would sell these Rolls Royces where it was like, you know, at 60 miles an hour, the only thing you can hear is the clock ticking in the Rolls Royce. It makes me feel good. It's pretty cool, right? It's pretty cool. Like, I'm getting an emotional compulsion to read more. And then he backs it up with logic over the next, like, you know, over most of the ad copy. So he pulls me in with some emotion, then he supports my emotional decision with logic where I can justify the buying, right? Or one of his other headlines was, every CEO should own a Rolls Royce, or every company should buy their CEO a Rolls Royce. Well, it's a CEO that, like, trigger that. I fucking love that. That stokes my ego, right? That feels good. But then he goes on to explain why in a very logical way. So now I can support it. I can make the decision of why I should own a Rolls Royce. So when I go to my wife and I tell her, hey, I'm getting a Rolls Royce, I have the logical explanation. She's going to see through it, but at least I have the logical explanation. And so you really want to focus on like that. Like, logic is the main thing. Emotions support the logic, right? So that's super critical. And then that process is going to go to an application. Some people get really overzealous in their application questions, but remember that every question on an application is going to create friction, which is going to drive up your lead cost. You will get higher quality leads, but if you're not getting enough volume of leads, Facebook isn't going to get the data back to understand who to optimize for, and you're not going to be able to get the spin that you want. So make it a short 4-question survey that's like, and don't ask them how much they fucking make. That's like the dumbest question in the world. And it triggers a ton of sales resistance. And here's the thing about high ticket funnels. Everyone knows they're coming to get sold. Like, you can call it a strategy call, you can call it a breakthrough call, you can call it an evaluation call, you can call it like whatever the fuck you want. Everybody knows at the end of the day, they're getting sold. So they know they're going through a sales process. So minimize the sales resistance by not being a total douche in the first part of the sales letter and through the application. Then they're going to book the call with you. And that's the, you know, then you have your calendar. That's super simple. Make sure your calendar, like if you're building this in GHL, don't bolt on a fucking Calendly calendar because you already have it. Take the time to build it out appropriately in Go High Level. So it all is very congruent and you're not relying on Zapier to push your shit back and forth because that's dumb. And then you're like, with Calendly, pixel integrations are weird and I don't recommend it at all. With Go High Level, you can integrate the pixels right into the actual forms, which is really nice. And then you can trigger custom conversion events and custom APIs that, you know, feed that data back to Facebook, and you can create custom audiences to drive traffic to them. It's really amazing. And so that's the high ticket funnel. Now, the last funnel I'm going to touch on, or the second to last, I'll touch on webinars very quickly. But the last funnel I'm going to touch on is my favorite so far. And we shot one today. It's called the Podcast VSL. So the Podcast VSL is me and someone else sitting next to each other talking. And we go through the hero's journey. So you can literally Google image a hero's journey architecture and you follow the 10 steps on the hero's journey. Don't do Russell Brunson's fucking trickery with the 3 and the, the whatever. I cannot stand the Expert Secret podcast VSL. Go for the hero's journey. It's badass. And you get to pull out the narrative, and you don't show anything on the page but the headline and the VSL. And then once they hit a certain break point on the VSL, like 50% or, whatever, you start to display certain trigger items as the VSL goes on. This takes a little bit of developer expertise and finesse, but you can find somebody on Upwork for pretty inexpensive to help you with that. But it's a really cool way to do it because you can show what you want to show as the VSL goes on. You can also integrate different breakpoints in the VSL to trigger different audiences. So I talked about the 5 steps of awareness. Well, all right, if they're totally unaware, they just landed on the page, they've watched the first 10 seconds of the video. If they bounce at the first 10 seconds of the video, they go into an unaware conversion event in audience in Facebook. If they get to like 25%, they're probably understanding the problem that they face and they're resonating through the story that the main hero, the person is talking about, is telling. Now they're going to go into a problem awareness bucket. And this is really critical for retargeting. And if you sleep on retargeting, you're dumb and you're wasting money. So don't sleep on retargeting. It's a complex system. We'll go through it later, but it's super, super critical. And then if they make it to like 50 or 75%, now they're starting to become solution aware, right? They're coming out of the pit of the hero's journey. They're starting to feel the things. And then at like 75, 85%, so you can, create the conversion mechanism and create that targeting in Facebook. And then you go to the next step, which is the product awareness, right? Create the bucket. And then after they've watched the whole thing, they're most aware, go into the most aware bucket. Now you have the conversion events. Now you have everything. And at each point, at each one of those breakpoints, you're displaying more and more of the sales page. And then you're pushing them to the calendar after they've totally been indoctrinated. And that's an amazing place to be. Now the webinar funnel, that funnel crushes if you actually take the time to do it. Get a badass setup, do something like this, come out here to Content Factory, whatever you're going to do. It's really cool. The final funnel, I'll touch on it briefly. So webinar funnels, it's basically like a short form VSL, what you're going to talk about in the webinar. I don't like automated webinars. Go live with a small opt-in. That opt-in goes to the webinar thank you page or the Zoom page or the webinar jam. And it's a registration. It's so simple. Like I said, that's all I'm going to give you on webinars. So now we've covered the first 3 elements. We've covered the marketing mindset. We've covered the offer market fit. And we've covered funnel structure. So now we're going to kind of go into the 4th section, right? So we're going to dive into the 4th section, which this is where you make a baby. This is where you start to have a lot of fun. This is like where kind of all the rules go out of the window and you really start to have a lot of fun with your creative expression. And the reason I say that is a lot of people try to confine copywriting into this box. And there are best practices. There are different things that'll work. But at the end of the day, the best copywriters come down to just a granular level of ingenuity and creativity. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of the people that I would highly recommend reading. Here's the thing though. You can swipe copy and like Alan Sultanic calls it the ECA model, which is essentially is how you build these components. And over time you will, like his whole thing is you have these components and then you take the components and then you assemble them, which is a really nice way of like structuring copy. And when you build up your own repository of like swipe files and copy that you've written in the past and copy that converts really well, you can start to build and chunk pieces together. And now like I have, hundreds of sales letters I've written, long form, hundreds of ads, VSL scripts, all these different things. And it's cool because I can find the highest converting for certain areas and I know what works and I can pull them in and I can assemble these pieces and it's nice, right? It's nice to pull all these pieces together and have them. But the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to just rely on pulling the pieces together because you'll lose the creativity and you'll start to have this like weird approach of just everything sounding the same. And before we dive into like who you should read, how you should approach this, I want to touch on AI and ChatGPT and Claude and Benson and all these other AI tools. They can be really helpful. But what I found is people use them to create high volume of copy or like a ton of variations and shortcut it. And if you don't go through the understanding and learning of writing copy, you're going to really struggle because people's attention spans have gotten shorter. That doesn't mean your copy has to get shorter. That doesn't mean you can only write 3 sentences to get a point across. That just means that every sentence you write has to be better to capture and captivate the attention and pull them along the road, right? So a lot of people say, well, I just use AI for the brainstorming or whatever. I still don't use AI for the brainstorming. And I mean, I've spent hundreds of hours trying to like get AI where it needs to be. I've talked to AI experts. I've paid people to train me on it. I've done all the things to try to make AI sound like my voice, and it has never sounded like my voice. And then when it gets me to the 80%, I'm trying to fit it within my box, and fitting it within my box can really start to mess with my ability to assemble things in a creative way. That's my take on it. You can find prompts, you can find all the things. I just recommend going against it, especially in the beginning, especially until you actually find your voice. So the first part that we're going to touch on, which I love this, and I read a ton of old school copywriting books. So I call it reading the greats, right? There's a few people that you're really, really, really going to want to read, and there are more people you're going to want to read as well. But a few resources that are going to lead you into a really good place. So Dan Kennedy, he's like the great, he crushes. All of his stuff is really great to read. All of his frameworks are great to go through. All of his stuff is amazing. Jim Edwards is a little bit newer, and I love Jim Edwards' stuff, like Copywriting Secrets. His books are incredible. A lot of Dan Kennedy's books, like they do have a lot of call to actions to pull you into his, inner circle or his diamond or whatever the fuck he calls it. And that's good. Like he should, and you should join him, and you should learn from him, and you should consume as much of his stuff as you can do, as much as you can consume. And then you want to look at Eugene Schwartz. You're going to want to look at David Ogilvy. I'm a big fan of David Ogilvy because I sell a lot of really expensive things. And David Ogilvy he wrote ads for Rolls-Royce. He wrote a ton of these ads for like really expensive products and services. So he speaks to a wealthier demographic, and I like that because I can resonate with that, and I can get a lot of inspiration from the psychological triggers that pull these people in. Gary Halbert, right? And then you have a couple good ones that are like, Joe Sugarman. Joe Sugarman's phenomenal. Like the Adweek book, I love that book. And then I like to go into Agora Financial, right? So Agora is interesting because they write a lot of financial copy. It's a lot of really, really long form copy. But it's really good because it's educating people on a really sophisticated market, and it teaches you how to write really long form sales letters. So for example, the other day I had to write something on a gold mill and a gold mine. We're raising capital for gold mills and gold processing plants. And the demographic for that is like gold's traditionally a more right-wing, conservative, older male demographic. And when you look at how they consume content, it's usually heavily text-based with not a lot of images. And the images, they like to be graphs. So I'll comb through a bunch of Agora stuff, see how they structure copy and punchy headlines and things like that, written within frameworks of these like very intellectualized sales letters. So you can kind of combine direct response with that. And then a couple people that these are like controversial, and a lot of people will disagree with me, and those people are just fucking wrong. So I usually say things aren't super black and white, but you need to get the breadth of all experiences. So the two people that I'm huge fans of that most people underestimate are Richard Bandler and Milton Erickson. So Ericksonian hypnosis, grandfather of all hypnosis. And Richard Bandler's like the godfather of NLP, right? Those two guys are incredible. A couple of their resources that are really, really good is My Voice Will Go With You. So that talks about Ericksonian hypnosis. That is all about the different ways that he brings people into trance, how he uses brief hypnosis, and just read through the stories. Like read through every one of the stories. And I mean, I've listened to that book probably 6 times, and I've read that book like 3 times. It is amazing. And then the other one is The Structure of Magic. So The Structure of Magic is one of Richard Bandler's like less well-known books. It's not an audiobook, so you have to read it. But it goes into this really cool contextualization of how people think. So it'll say the pen is blue, right? So when I say the pen is blue, you start to associate all these all these properties and all these things, and it starts to show you the limitations that people's minds place on certain qualities and characteristics. I'm a huge fan of using NLP and hypnosis language and models in all of my copy. And what it does is it speaks to the unconscious mind. So when I'm talking to a wealthier prospect that generally has a higher level of sales resistance, because they all do, and now with how much marketing is just being pushed into the marketplace, you really have to find a way to convey a meaning to the unconscious mind that is unique, right? So you need to be able to do it in a way that isn't super conscious and isn't really pulling them in a way that is aggressive, but it still needs to be direct response. And the hypnotic language models and the NLP models really give you the framework to do that. So Milton model, meta model, both those models are incredible frameworks to use. There's a ton of ways to bend people's minds open, to open up their mind, and to really convey meaning to the unconscious mind, to embed suggestions and get them along this way, along this process, along this way, and how you can do that. The other teacher of copy, which is highly underestimated, is life experiences. I have had a very wide array of life experiences, and I would say that the best copywriters have had a very wide array of life experiences. So from quick backstory, I mean, from selling drugs and getting arrested for, conspiracy to commit armed robbery, to going to jail, to difficulties in my marriage, to the ups and downs of being a dad, to riding bulls and riding bulls in front of 2,000 people when I had absolutely no business doing that. I didn't have any training, literally had a guy that I met at a rodeo. His name's Casey Kerwin. He's still a good friend today. Literally saved my life at a rodeo. He could tell that I had never ridden before, and he was like, "What the fuck are you doing here? You obviously don't have any experience." But my uncle gave me all this stuff. He was like a professional bull rider. And I was like, "No, dude, I got it." And he was like, "Yeah, you don't have it. You need to listen to me, and you need to shut the fuck up, because I know what I'm doing, and I'm on the professional circuit." So I listened to him, and he takes me through this process, and he takes me through all the things I need to do with my hands and how to tie the rope and how to get out of the way of the bull. And it was very grateful for him, because it was actually an intense rodeo where really good people were riding. And the funny thing about rodeos, anyone can sign up. You don't have to you pay $20 or $100 or whatever the entry fee is, and they will fucking sit you on a bull and let you go wild, right? Which it's crazy that they do that. And you sign any liability away because you're the idiot that got on the back of a bull. So if you don't have a lot of life experiences, if you haven't traveled the world, if you haven't made a lot of mistakes, writing really good copy is going to be hard, because you don't know how to convey the wide array of emotions that people are going to feel in the pits of despair, or whether they're on top of the world. And those ranges of intense emotions allow you to communicate in a way that just really meets people. And I was fortunate, I didn't grow up crazy rich, but my parents, they did pretty well. My home life was great. And we got to travel to a ton of different cultures around the world. For my honeymoon, we went to Sri Lanka, which is a story in and of itself. But all these failures, all these businesses, all these things I've tried, all the industries I've been a part of have given me this really unique life experience that has led me to find my voice. And it'll lead you to find your voice as well. So if you haven't had a lot of life experiences, I'm not saying you can't write good copy, but I'm saying you should go out and try the most wild things, because whether you fail or whether you succeed, it gives you stories. And stories are the backbone of writing good copy. Our company, or one of the companies that we have, is called Sell the Story. And that marketing agency was based on the premise that the story of the people, that company was founded on the premise of the story that the people have, the story that these entrepreneurs have, are the stories that sell. It's the hero's journey. It's the archetypes, it's the architectures. It's the, in all these unique experiences will lend themselves incredibly, incredibly well to being able to write really effective copy. So then I want to go into the copywriting basics and the structure of how you write copy. I've already said copy is a creative process, and creative processes can't be rushed. It's kind of like being pregnant. And I've never been pregnant, because guys can't get pregnant, obviously, contrary to what a lot of the fucking politics say. but they can't. That's just a fact. But that gestation process, I call it the gestation of marketing. And I say that with caution because that's going to give people the license to make things perfect before they launch. And I fully believe that 80% is good enough to launch, because in marketing, like I said earlier, it's a best guess in time. It's an assumption. So you don't really know, right? You kind of know. You make some assumptions. But the thing with that is you have to get started, and you have to start on this creative process. So I'm going to walk you through my creative process. And like I already said a couple minutes ago, I don't believe in things being black or white, but I do believe in certain frameworks and certain strategies that will help you be successful. So my creative process is starting with a ton of research. If you are not an absolute expert on your vertical, on your industry, on what you're going to write for, it's going to be very, very, very challenging for you to write exceptionally well. And you're going to find so much difficulty in anything you do moving forward. So, for example, I've learned a lot about the investment markets over the past year and a half. That's where I've written a lot of my copy in the past year and a half. And I've spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours, like so much time consuming so much research that I never thought I would be interested in. I've dived deep into like watching the shows, the right wing, the left wing news. I've watched every like financial thing I can consume, watch all the YouTube, watch all the things, because in that you consume these good headlines, you build swipe files of things that are working. And I mean, for the gold article that I just wrote, even though I've been heavily involved in hundreds of hours of research in the financial markets, gold has eluded me. I haven't needed to research any gold. It's been real estate. It's been taking people to space. It's been, supersonic and hypersonic travel. Like, we've raised for some really, really, really cool products, but we haven't done gold. And that market was really interesting because, like I said, it's an older demographic. It's primarily white males that are, right-wing conservative. It's not a race, or it's a fact of like what the actual demographic is. And so for this one sales letter, I probably did 30 hours of research. Oddly enough, every piece of research that I wrote was in my notes on my MacBook, and I tried to get my MacBook to sync to my iCloud so I could have it on my iMac. And when I did that, I lost every single piece of research that I did, and I had to restart. So then I went back through consuming all the YouTube videos. I went back through taking all the notes. I went back through timestamping, snapshotting charts, using all the research I could leverage to write this really effective sales letter. Then you take a break. If you sleep, if you go on a walk, whatever you do, watch TV, I don't know, like do whatever you need to do for your creative process, but take a break, walk away from it. You can even start on a new project, but I have a lot of projects at one time. I like to work cohesively on one vertical at a time. I don't always have that luxury because this is the real world, and I actually have deadlines for certain clients. Like, we run very tight project management schedules. And so there's definitely time constraints. But the biggest thing that I would recommend is go into that creative space where you don't have your phone, where you've taken some time off, where you've done your research, and then you're going to take like at least an hour-long break. If you can sleep on it after the research, that's huge. That's a high recommendation, is to sleep after your research, because your unconscious mind is going to do some really cool programming in that time, and it's going to embed a lot of things into your mind that you're going to understand and that are going to illuminate themselves in the copy. And you're like, whoa, I didn't even know that I knew that. But you did know it. And it's cool to watch how that unfolds and extrapolates into what you're doing next. So then you're going to take your break, and then you're going to do your brain dump. And I have a vibe board, which is like this electronic whiteboard. And I like to draw a lot of diagrams. Another good book on that is something called Resonate. Resonate was a book written by a lady that teaches people how to make effective slideshows. And she does it by showing how to draw different information arrays, like sequential clusters, Venn diagrams, all these different unique ways to really create cohesive pictures. That's kind of how my mind works. I work really well with that. But I'll draw these pictures, I'll write out a bunch of stuff, I take all my notes, I pull all my stuff together, I pull all my swipe files, and I just brain dump. I do all the drawings, I just write a bunch of bullets, I write the things that could be really important. I kind of start to come up with the structure that I want to follow, and I'll go over some copywriting structures in a minute. But I go over the pieces that I just brain dump everything. And it can be just a 12 to 20 page document. It can be an hour or two of just drawing diagrams. It can be all these connection points. It's however your mind works the best. You're just going to get everything down that you think is important. All the research, all the structure, kind of how you want it to flow. And then you're going to take a break, right? So you're starting to get a theme. You do this, it goes work, break, work, break, work, break. The reason being is this creative process is an intensive process. And if you're familiar with fitness, which you should be, because that's a good thing, then you're going to want to take these high intervals of intensity training, right? So that's your work interval. And then you're going to want to take a rest interval. That allows you to maximize your creative output or your power output in fitness. So when you dive into this, when you get going, when you really get comfortable, you're going to brain dump everything. You're going to take a break. It doesn't have to be the same type of break, but 30 minutes, hour, overnight, whatever it's going to be. And then you're going to go into what I call the emotional dump. So the emotional dump is now you kind of have the structure, and now you're going to start architecting the actual formula of your copy. You're going to want to start playing with it. You're going to want to start putting it down. You're going to want to start putting pen to paper, and you make your let this emotional outpouring go. The way that I really like to do this is there's an app called Brain FM. You should definitely download it. And if you have an iPhone, you should. I don't know if they have it for Android, because if you use an Android, you probably don't write copy or do much of anything. I'm just kidding. But a lot of people have iPhones. So, you should definitely go that route. And the reason I say that is when you listen to Brain FM, it's called a binaural beat. You have to listen to it with headphones. It doesn't work if you don't listen to it with headphones, because the right ear plays something different from the left ear. But it puts your brain in this synchronized state of a heightened awareness, right? So you can do it for deep work, you can do it for studying and learning, you can do it for creativity. So you're gonna want to put it on creativity. And then an important thing that a lot of people don't know is you can actually choose your intensity level. I would say that I have a pretty high degree of ADD or ADHD, whatever the fuck you want to call it. And I put it on the extreme, the highest effect, and it works really, really well. And that's really nice. So it lets you get this really emotional outpouring. There's no distractions. Whenever you write copy at any one of these phases, you want to be completely undisturbed. You want to put your phone on do not disturb and put it outside of being in reach. You want to put your computer on do not disturb. Make sure you have no notifications, and then go through this emotional outpouring. And that for me looks like just this fucking chaotic structure of words. And I actually got this tactic from Joe Sugarman. So Joe Sugarman really recommends this, and I found it to be one of the most effective ways for me to lay a groundwork of copy. The reason there's a multi-step process is, like I said, it's like giving birth to a baby. You're creating something that people are going to respond to. You're captivating attention, and then you're going to pull people in, and you need to have the emotional outpouring. And then what I like to do is I like to take that emotional outpouring and structure it in a way that's a little bit more cohesive. So after the emotional outpouring, you take a break again, and then you start to pull it together a little bit more cohesive. You start to cut and edit sentences, and the editing process is really, really valuable, and a ton of people underestimate it. So edit this copy in a way that's really effective. Take out any unnecessary words. Take out any, ambiguous modifiers, unless you're doing it from a hypnotic perspective, which is you can do it in a really unique way if you understand how that works. And there's tons of hypnotic copywriting stuff. You can subscribe to Scribd, and you can just look up hypnotic copy, and there's a long PDF in there that's exceptional. And it gives you all the headlines to use. It gives you all the different pieces and how to use it. It gives you really good examples, and it's really thorough. And I really like that. So that's a really, really effective way to do that. What you want to do after that is after you take your emotional outpouring and you put it in the structure that's going to work the best for you, the structure that you feel is going to be the most compelling, you're going to take another break. And then you're going to revise and edit. I go through about 6 edits on all my copy. Now sometimes I go through less. You can go through less. I'm not saying you should or you have to. It's just you continue to edit and revise and edit and revise. And in this second or third edit and revision process, I start to stylize all my headlines. And I write everything in Google Docs. I write it in Google Docs because if it crashes or anything, it's auto-saved. That's really helpful. I've lost really long sales pages when Word has crashed. And I don't like that. And I don't like writing inside of the funnel builders because you don't get the same cohesiveness. And then after I do that, I go back through and I edit with all my images. You really want to pull in captivating and emotionally compelling images that resonate along with your copy. Now you have this structure and you have everything. And the next part that I like to do is I go through and I refine all my headlines. You want to make sure that every headline is really compelling and captivating for people to read the next sentence. And I'm going to get into the slippery slope in a second. Again, that's a Joe Sugarman thing. It's not something I came up with, but it's super effective. And you have this copy. It's starting to get refined. It's starting to feel really good. Maybe you've added some emojis. Don't use like the smiley face emoji. I like to use emojis as bullet points because it's a way to break up large volumes of text. Now you're going to go into your headlines. So your headlines have to be captivating. They don't always have to be super exact to what you're writing. They need to build enough curiosity to pull someone in and have them read it. It doesn't have to be this perfect summary of what you're going to talk about. You can draw allusions, analogies, allegories, whatever you're going to do. You're going to paint a picture with your headlines, because when people read your copy, a lot of times they'll scroll through your copy one time, punch out the headlines. Okay, cool. This looks worth my time to read. They'll look at the images, and then you take another break, and then you go into the final process of editing. Right? This is when you're going to submit it to a client. This is going to be when you start getting ready to build it. Don't put it into your funnel. Don't put it into any automation software until it's 100% final, because it's always infinitely harder to correct copy once you put it into the actual like funnel builders or automations. You have to keep track of it, and that just gets painstaking. So that's my basic copy process. And now I'm going to go into the copywriting psychology. So the copywriting psychology is, and this could be talked about before or after the basics. I talk about it after, because if you try too hard to force this beforehand, it can be really hard to get started. So what I like to do is I get into the brain of the person that's going to read it. I want to know what they're feeling, experiencing, and everything like that. And then I make sure that it fits really nicely, right? And it fits within their mold. It fits within their shoes. It resonates with where they're at. If you write copy that doesn't meet your prospect where they're at in their awareness stage, it's not going to connect, and they're not going to be able to be pulled through, right? That's the first part of copy psychology. The second part of copy psychology is that you have to be willing to fail. You cannot be this like stuck in this perfectionist mindset. It will cripple you. It will make it really difficult. Fortunately, I'm not a perfectionist, so it's not hard for me. But if you are a perfectionist, it can be really difficult to write good copy. Because you really just have to like let go of that and let yourself flow. And now we're going to move, that's like copy psychology is kind of short. We've gone through a lot of mindset already, but now I want to go into what we call the slippery slope. So the slippery slope is, people always wonder, like, they always ask me, well, what's the point of a headline? What's the point of a subheadline, a pre-header? What's the point of bullets? What's the point of the first line? And they get really caught up in like, what's the point of each one of the modalities? But at the end of the day, I don't know who said this. I think it was Joe Sugarman. The very first part of copy, like your headline, the only purpose of your headline is to get someone to read your subheadline. The only purpose of your subheadline is to get people to read the first line. The only purpose of the first line is to get people to read the second line. The only purpose of the second line is to get someone to read the third line. And when you build your copy in that way on your final revision process, you're going to get really clear on understanding how to build cohesive copy. This is why I say that the copy doesn't really have a length defined. And Joe Sugarman says, it's one of my favorite quotes, that copy should be like a woman's skirt, long enough to cover the essentials, but short enough to keep things interesting, right? You've seen girls in like pencil skirts down to their ankles, not super interesting. Maybe, I guess if it's tight, sure. But short enough where it's captivating, not short enough where it's OnlyFans short, right? You're giving away too much. And you're not covering the essentials. So it needs to be long enough to cover the essentials, short enough to keep things interesting. The shortness comes out of the removal of unnecessary words, unnecessary thesis, unnecessary things like that. Now, I do tell a lot of stories in my copy, as you can tell through this video. I've told a good bit of stories, and it makes it fun, and I like the storytelling aspect of it. But those stories all have a purpose. And so the slippery slope, the last part of the slippery slope that really makes things effective is that the end of each paragraph should have a line that drags people into the next paragraph. If you've read my copy, you notice that I'm emphatic on ellipsis, which is the ... The reason I do this is we are conditioned that a ... is supposed to lead to something next. You want to close the end of a paragraph with the closing to wrap it up in a bow, and also reopen the next idea in a way that opens people to read the next headline. If you can have them drooling over the copy, if you can have that copy so sweet, if you can have that copy tantalizing, and pulling people in and just creating this emotional pull where they have to continue to read, it creates this really effective slippery slope. And that's how all these amazing copywriters have taken the one line to the next line, to the next line, to the next line, right? So that's kind of the slippery slope and how that's going to play into your copy. All right, so now I want to get into leveraging the copywriting frameworks. These are good rules to follow. I don't always follow them to a T because each framework kind of needs more bolt-on, but they're good models to think through. There's 100 primary frameworks out there that people love. And every day people are coming out with new ones. If you actually want to get a really good list of them, there's a ChatGPT prompt that you can find on, I think it's on GitHub. And if you search up Copy GPT, COPPIE GPT, it's by Winter Jones, I think, and it's on GitHub. You don't, like I said, the prompts, you can learn more by saying, plugging in her prompts and saying, tell me about this framework. She recommends it for headlines. I think it's atrocious, how ChatGPT spits it out in any of the ways that I've tried to model it. But she literally has hundreds of them listed in there. However, you want to get really, really good at a few. You want to get really good at a few of these primary frameworks. So I like to focus on 6 of them. The first one is the AIDA. So that's attention, interest, desire, action. Captivate the attention, communicate interest, leverage desire, call to action. Pretty simple. You can use this throughout your copy. Alan Sultanic has a twist on it. He has really good copywriting or infringements on some of his stuff. So I'm not going to tell you his specific framework, but he has a little bolt-on revision that's really good. You can join NHB Plus, or I think the automatic client system, and he walks through that framework. It just has a couple bolt-ons that are really good. But like I said, and again, there are no affiliates to any of the things that I list in here. Any resource that I'm listing, it's just a resource that I've leveraged. The next one was a Garrett J. White framework. He talks about this openly. I paid a shit ton of money to learn this framework. It's one of the few valuable copywriting things that I got, but it's the problem, pain, possibility, pitch framework. So you open up with the problem, you talk about the pain of each one of the problems, then you rewrite the possibilities, which is good because you create a really stark juxtaposition. And then you go into the pitch, which is the call to action. Then you have the 4 Ps framework. The 4 Ps framework is picture, promise, proof, push, right? So you create a picture, you paint a picture, you give them the promise, you do the proof, which is testimonials and things like that, social proof, credibility, and then you go into the push, which is the call to action. Another good one is the PAS framework. Jim Edwards uses this in his 13 steps of copywriting, which is the problem, agitate, solve. So you create the problem, agitate the problem, solve the problem. And then the before after bridge, which is the BAB framework, right? So what's their before situation? What's their after situation? What's the bridge? And the bridge is your unique mechanism. And then another one, this is I use this extensively in bullets, and I really only use it in bullets. Again, it came from Jim Edwards. It's the FBM. So feature, benefit, meaning. What's the feature? What's the benefit? What's the meaning? So the feature of a Mac is that, hey, this Mac, it's a computer, that starts up really fast and has all these unique, components inside of it, these core processors or whatever, it has the unique Mac OS. That's cool. The benefit of that is that it starts really fast. It's super simple to use. It has a really clean user interface, which means, it can mean a ton of things for you. It can mean that your status is going to increase, that you're going to have less stress when you get on the computer. Your iMessages are going to sync, and that's going to make you feel really good. And if you have Apple products, then people know you have Apple products, and it's a representation of high status. All those things kind of start to come together, right? So each one of those models have their own place and time, and really is how you use them and which ones you like the best. I would recommend starting with one framework and getting really, really good at it. I say that though with caution. The caution is when you go with with some of the problem first frameworks, they can be difficult for business opportunity products and services, because when you go with a business opportunity, a lot of times people want to hear the value of the benefit, and they're not always in a really negative state. And if you're not in a negative state, if the client's not in a negative state and you try to elicit this really negative state, there's not going to be resonance, and they're not going to follow along with your copy. The other part is when you go into really heavy on the problem side of things, you have to really know which problem you're going to solve. Otherwise, you can attract a really desperate market. So I've launched marriage offers, coaching offers, debt offers, all these things that have attracted really desperate people because I've drilled down too hard on the problems. And when you drill down too hard in the darkness, sometimes you can get people that have no money, homeless people. Like I've literally had homeless people that have a cell phone that have booked calls with me, or book calls with my clients because I didn't understand the problem well enough to extrapolate how it needed to be said, how it needed to be labeled, and communicate their desire effectively to pull them along. So those are just two things with the copywriting basics. Like I said, the Copy GPT has all has all of Frank Kern's stuff. He's another great copywriter you should read. Has all the different sales letters across the board. Has a ton of these frameworks that you can really learn from. And that wraps up the primary frameworks, right? So we're going to do a quick deep dive into a few different email or copywriting structures and where they place. And so I want to talk about ad copy first. So ad copy is going to be really important because you don't always have a ton of room for ad copy. So like TikTok has its own methodologies. Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram, they have their own like character formats. Google has its own thing. You really have to know the format where people are going. And we'll talk more about the intent of each channel in a couple minutes when I get into media buying and platforms. But know how that copy reads, know what it should look like, know what it should feel like. It should feel organic enough to the platform to feel like a social piece of content, which could be the use of emojis, which could be the use of different, various frameworks. But I like to chunk all of my copy and ad copy in a line by line format. I'm pretty consistent with that across any format that I do. But ad copy is going to need to be a little bit shorter and punchier. So the AIDA framework is a really good framework for ad copy. And then a lot of times if I'm pulling people from an ad to a VSL, what I will do, or if I'm selling a book, I timestamp I go through the video and I timestamp the integral parts because you really want high view rates on your videos. And this is a little trick, right? So I'll put we talk about this here at this timestamp. 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 And what it does is it illuminates the fact that you're actually delivering value and people will watch more of the video, especially if they want something at the end, right? Because the copy showed them what they're talking about. With book funnels, this can be really good. You can say, hey, on page 3, on page 10, on page 30, on page 100, on page 300, talk about this, whatever it is, right? And that's a simple way to do it. Also, with ad copy, your ad headlines should be the same as your landing page headlines, which means you're going to be able to test less variations. But if you have a high bounce rate from ad to landing page, which means people are jumping off really quickly, like I said, Facebook's going to penalize you and they're going to make your cost per click go up. It's just kind of a nightmare to be in. You don't want to be in that process. So that's going to help the most with your click-through rates and your hold rates and getting people through your funnels. The next thing I want to talk about is emails. There's been a lot of, Russell Brunson has talked a lot about his Seinfeld sequences. If you've read his books, I like Russell's stuff somewhat. I wouldn't recommend going super deep into a lot of his things because a lot of it's been just abused and people get really aware. One thing you have to realize is you're dealing with a sophisticated market. And when you deal with a sophisticated market, they have sales resistance. And a lot of Russell's stuff, they've seen it over and over and over and over again because he was such a prolific writer. He used all of his books to sell ClickFunnels. I mean, I think he's the top spender on social platforms for ad buying. And so you just need to be wary of that. That's a really important thing to remember. So when you go into emails, I only write emails for event-driven sequences. So the only time I write emails is you have your emails for confirmation, everything like that, appointment confirmations, event reminders, webinar sequences, whatever. Those are pretty simple. I do like to keep my emails short. Jim Edwards has a pretty good teaser or a pretty good framework on email teasers, which is cool, where if you are going to email your list and nurture them, email them and email them a teaser that's cool, cool subject line that really opens them up. And then it's hey, I have this really cool new training for you and it's going to be really valuable and you're going to learn X, Y, and Z, but to learn more, you need to watch this YouTube video. Click below. And then it has a picture of the YouTube video. They watch the YouTube video, they click out of your emails get high click-through rates, they get high open rates. With that though, you have to deliver a lot of value. And so Russell's Seinfeld sequences and all these indoctrination sequences, I see really low open rates with that. And I actually get a pretty consistent open rate on my emails of about 40% and a click-through rate of about 4 to 6%. There are definitely people that have higher open and click-through rates. Frank Kern has great email information. Again, if you sign up for Scribd, you can find like a ton of his email masterclasses and things like that. Another person, if you have the money to book a call with them, Michael Kelly is $500. Again, no affiliates in any of this stuff. Just people, like, you can tell how much research I've done and how much I've studied. And that's why I'm giving you all the people that have had tremendous value on me and a tremendous impact on me. Book a call with Michael Kelly if you have a massive list and you really want to get good at list nurturing. Like, Michael is somehow able to get fucking hundreds of thousands of dollars out of lists that have been dead forever. He is able to like resurrect these lists and crush it. And I've paid for a lot of Michael's swipe files, and I use a lot of his email templates because they have these really good story architectures and bullets in there. And I think he's still selling like his live event sequence, or at least like if you hit him up on Facebook or on Instagram, or if you go to adsandfunnels.org, I think, get his contact, reach out to him. He's a super cool dude. He's super chill. He has neck tattoos, got a bunch of tattoos, super cool guy. Like, that's how you're going to find him. So find Michael Kelly, book a call with him, or find out how you can get his email templates, find out how you can get his live sequence reminders and all these things. And you'll find some pretty good story architectures and how to imbue benefits into the emails to keep people captivated. Michael does write long form emails, and they are fucking rock solid. So I would highly recommend looking at his email sequences. And then we go into VSL scripts. So VSL scripts are a really unique character of their own because it's a written word that is going to be turned into a spoken word. I personally don't write my own VSL scripts. I go off the cuff because I know the frameworks that I want to say and how I say it and how I'm going to deliver it. And when I read off a script, I lack a little bit of the enthusiasm and a little bit of the personality that I have that comes off in the videos. But some people need scripts. And what I would say to the people who need scripts is there are some people that have really amazing VSL scripts. And actually, if you go to it's bnsn.ai, Benson AI, this is the best resource I found for VSL scripts. And it's the only time I've used AI to write any copy, because they have some really phenomenal long form sales scripts that work really, really well. But another good way to kind of architect a VSL script is if you go on Square Dance, if you go on Digistore 24, if you go on ClickBank and you search for the highest affiliates, a lot of affiliates use VSLs to do indoctrination. And then you can sometimes figure out how to download those. There's a ton of different download mechanisms, like Black Hat shit. You can Google Chrome extensions where you can download the VSL and then go to rev.com, and you're going to upload that VSL into the, you're going to upload the video into Rev, and then it's going to give you an AI transcript of the entire video. You can copy that AI transcript and you can plug it into an AI, like a ChatGPT, and say, hey, break down the format of this so you can understand the architecture. But more than just plugging it into the, ChatGPT, what I would do, again, I'm like a handwritten guy. I'm a little bit resistant to some AI because I think it does some of the creative unconscious work for you it's effective if you are still learning the process. Print the VSL out, the VSL script, and then take a highlighter, and I get 10 different highlighter colors, and then I'll highlight the different sections, and I'll notate how the sections were pulled through. The reason I say that is again, the Digistore 24, Square Dance, ClickBank, all these have these really good VSLs, and these affiliates have become gangster at making super good VSLs. And most of them are these dudes in their basement that will never come up for sunlight. So they are never on camera. And because they're never on camera, they rely totally on a voiceover VSL, which means it has to be really compelling. And you can find some really cool story architectures in that. Another VSL methodology that I've come up with recently that I fucking love is a podcast VSL. And I recorded one with Brody Kern earlier today where we sit down. It's a long form VSL. Another one of my clients who I'll be revealing at the end of this week, who we're working with. We're not allowed to say right now, but hopefully by the time this video comes out, I'll be able to drop it in the fucking comments or something. We did this for him. It's really, really effective because it's just the podcast, right? And there's a lot of value delivery in it. And what I do is I follow the hero's journey. So look up a hero's journey, look up the, I think it's like a 10-step architecture of the hero's journey, and then format your questions to fit in the hero's journey. And then you can have someone ask it to you, and it creates a really valuable dialogue between you and another person that's a little bit more dynamic and a little bit different than traditional direct-to-camera VSLs. So VSL scripts, again, if anything, I'm a real big fan of bullets and frameworks. You can find, if you watch any of Tony Robbins and how he speaks, and if you watch any of Tony Robbins' VSLs, he's a very dynamic presenter, and he leverages a lot of NLP and all of his stuff. Another guy, VSLs are really speech presentations on a one-to-many basis. And any copy, the unique thing about copy, if you're good at sales, you're going to be a little bit better at copy, because sales is just, copy is just a one-to-many sales opportunity. So you can leverage a ton of the same sales skills of how you walk people through the sales process into your copy. And when you get into the VSL format, it's even more like sales because you're actually talking to them. I don't think I've ever closed anyone through text message. So it's always an open dialogue. Where I don't think anybody's ever texted me and been like, hey, here's my credit card and I'll pay. And we never had a sales call. I don't think that's ever happened. Maybe I would like to say I was that dope and just, people are paying me $100K off a fucking, I don't think it's ever happened. They might book a call with me and then we talk. Another guy that you can follow, Michael Savage. He hasn't launched it yet. He's in the process of launching a dynamic speaking coaching course. He's a phenomenal presenter. He is phenomenal on VSLs. I love when Michael Savage records VSLs because they're so good and he's so good at doing them and he doesn't need a script. But just becoming a dynamic speaker is going to be very helpful. And if you have a client that's not a dynamic speaker, I'm going to tell you right now, you need to fly to wherever the fuck they are. Sit down with them, podcast style VSL, hire a videographer that has the multi-camera dope setup. Sit down, bang it out. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, but at the end of the day, it's quality over quantity. So you want to make sure you have something good, right? All right, and then that brings me to my last point again with the hypnotic language. So I want to just touch on this a little bit because it's so effective. And if you're looking for someone to learn hypnotic language, and I know I'm giving you a lot of resources, but becoming a master at this and becoming really effective in marketing requires you pulling from all these different industries, requires you pulling from all these different people. It just requires an information bank, a repository of experiences and all these different conversations and connections and networks, and you get really good the more you do it. William Lamb at Upgrade is doing a lot of really cool stuff with waking hypnosis and NLP. His programs are a little bit, I wouldn't say expensive by any means. I'll pay for anything William ever comes out with probably for the rest of my life because all of his shit is so good. And I think actually what I'll do is in the section below, what I'll do, I'll drop a lot of the resources that I list here. But he has a bunch of different programs. You can do the Launch Live program. You can do, and that's that's an inexpensive one that's very affordable to mass market. It's his lower ticket offer. All of his programs are really affordable when you actually look at the ROI on the investment. They're fucking phenomenal. And he will teach you more about hypnotic language in a way that allows you to structure your copy in a higher effect or more effective way than anyone I've ever met. But a couple of pieces that I want to talk about real quick on the hypnotic language. Again, read Richard Bandler, read My Voice Will Go With You, and anything you could study on Milton Erickson or Richard Bandler, Milton Erickson. Those are going to be two of the greats. Tad James is I'm not a huge fan of him. Not saying he's bad. I just have never really gleaned a ton of value. He's in the NLP space too. But you want to I like to open with the question imagine, right? Or what if? You ask these questions that open people's minds and actually unconsciously get them into a space where it kind of breaks the conscious mold, right? And then you're going to future pace. Imagine if you're sitting there in the morning in 2029 and you're sipping this cup of coffee and you're looking out of the window and you're in the Bahamas, feeling the ocean breeze, you smell that ocean air and you taste that sip of coffee and you're just thinking to yourself, man, I finally made it. Could you imagine for a second going into your body? You take that first sip of coffee, your second, your third, your fourth, the waves are crashing, seventh sip, eighth sip, you start to just feel this experience that's hyper relaxing. And you start to go into this method, this model of just great appreciation and gratitude. And that sensory experience begins to just wash over you. And it feels good, doesn't it? You feel just this massive, tremendous weight that's lifted off your shoulders. And in that moment, you know everything you've done was worth it. All the research, all the time spent, all the trials, all the success, all the greatness. This life is easy and effortless now. That's what you want, right? You want to be in that space. You want to experience all the things that you could experience. And it reminds me of these times when I would just be sitting there at my laptop, wondering if what I was doing was worth it and making a difference. And then it's times like this, it's times like that, so long ago that you remember now. And you start to just develop this really interesting appreciation in your life for all those times, for all that work you did. So do that work. And then I'll remember these times when I just would finish writing that copy and I would present it to a client, and they were so grateful and so appreciative. And I would start to understand that everything I'd ever done in my life that led up to that was 100% worth it. And that's why you should focus on these trainings, on this lesson, on absorbing as much content as possible. That's why you should focus on all of these things. Because at the end of the day, if you were to bring that moment back to now, you're going to come back into the room that you're in, sitting in the chair that you're in, listening to what you're listening in to. And as you listen to more of this, you're going to get more comfortable and more educated and understand more and more, even if it's not a conscious understanding. Then you're going to come back to a place of just understanding and gratitude and ready to work and ready to listen and ready to refocus. That's what you want, right? So the reason I like to walk through that was just a hypnotic model with like embedded suggestions, all of these interesting things, the future pacing. I broke the frame of your normal day and I took you into a deep trance so you could experience these sensory experiences. And I hit most of your senses, right? We went through the taste, the smell, the thought, we future paced it. I broke you out of your current reality. I put you in a place that you can probably relate to smell the salt air, to hear the waves. And then with the trance induction of counting of the 1, 2, 3, and then skipping a number from 5 and going to 7, I start to break the conscious mind into a place that the unconscious starts to take over and you start to become more susceptible to suggestions. Then I embed the suggestion of do more of this now. And then all the work that you're doing, all the trainings you're listening to are worth it, right? And that's a tag question. So the right, now you're agreeing with me and you're in this place where your sales resistance is decreased and you're in this place where you're more accepting to my ideas. And I open a story loop, and then the story loop of sitting down at my laptop takes you into a place when you're sitting at your laptop. And then I embed the suggestion of how it was all worth it and you should do it now and listen to more trainings, right? And you're maybe in the past you've been not susceptible to listening to trainings, but you've listened to them, like you're going to listen more now because that suggestion has been stuck in your unconscious and it stays there. And then I close the loop of the story at the peak of the story where you're not sure if it's all worth it and you're questioning things. And then we loop back around to close it to give you the completeness. And then we fulfill the desire by bringing it back today and anchoring that future amazing reality and bringing you here now. All of those things, all of those tag questions, all of those hypnotic language models can play such an important role in your copy. And your clients are always going to be concerned, well, it doesn't match my brand voice. And that's okay, because when you explain why it doesn't match their brand voice, and I write for celebrities, I write for people who are very well known, who I have to match their brand voice. And I'm relentless on pursuing the desire to embed hypnotic language into my models because I know how effective it is. The reason I don't give you like a massive primer, you can take some of these subjects that I've used, is because the depth at which you need to learn this is there's a lot, but you can still start and you can still start playing with it. And I write a story every night. Like me personally, I'll get a pen and paper and I'll write a story every single night because I want to get better at storytelling and I want to get better at leveraging each one of these models, the Milton model, the meta model of chunking up and down and breaking your reality and solving problems. Each one of those is going to play an important role in your copy. I would never sleep on the ability to use hypnotic language in your copy because it is hyper effective, as you could just see as we walk through that little trance induction or experience that we just did. So that wraps up the copy. And now I want to dive into the funnel building. At this point, you should have this like rock solid foundation of copy. It should be incredible. It should be really tight. It should be you should be very happy with where your current copy's at. So now after the copy is laid down, we're going to go into designing your funnel. Designing your funnel can be done in a variety of ways. I'm personally a fan of using a funnel designer because there are some like design principles that are going to be fundamental and instrumental into designing this really well. And typically I like my funnel designs to be built in Figma. And honestly, if you find the right funnel builder, you can usually get designs done for like $750 to $1,250. I don't know your budget today. You could think that's expensive, but a true and good design is invaluable. So the guy that I would recommend for that, his name's Justin Harwood. And if you talk to Justin, like look him up. I think you look him up on Facebook. It's like harwoodmedia.ca. Or if you just need a contact, like shoot me a message. He crushes it. He's got a lot of good fundamental design principles, but he builds them in Figma, and that allows you to go through and tag and edit all the things. Before I go into, like, I'm not going to go deep into the psychology of funnel design because that is, I'm not an expert there. I do know a lot of like color psychology. I do know a lot of layout stuff, but at the end of the day, there are people who are just astronomically better at funnel design than me. But I do know what a good funnel looks like, and I know what a bad funnel looks like. I will tell you this. Ugly funnels convert all the time. For example, the early bird morning drink. It's like a little caffeinated energy drink that you powder, you scoop in the morning. It helps you get out of bed. It does whatever. That does really, really, really well for people, or like that funnel crushed. And I thought it was a hideous fucking funnel. It's got like copybook or comic book images, which I know a lot of people like my buddy Michael Savage. He's like used to own comic book stores. I know people geek out over that. Like I've never read a comic in my life. I just know that's a big thing. Like I've talked to girls that fucking love comics. I'm not a comic guy. It was like this ugly ass orange yellow, which was their brand color. I didn't love any of the fonts they used. I didn't love the layout of it. But I personally know those guys on the back end, and their conversions were fucking insane. So ugly funnels do convert. Now, some people might think that's a beautiful funnel, but then you have highly over-designed funnels, and I've seen some of them, and a lot of them are done through coaches. Like a lot of coaches go with these highly over-designed funnels, and they don't convert because they don't follow some of the good principles. Like Alan Sultanic's funnels, I'm a big fan of those. They are neither like super attractive or super ugly, but they follow really good fundamental design principles where your eyes are pulled in two directions. Again, like Justin knows how to make these things great. But the thing that you need to know as a marketer, as a copywriter, as someone who Justin like isn't necessarily going to pull all these things together. He'll do a great job on the design, but the above the fold section is where you need to put all of your attention. So we had the industry average for lead gen is 3% conversions on a funnel. So when we launched a bunch of our funnels earlier this year, we were converting at 3%, which was fine. We were at the industry average, but I didn't want to settle for that. I kept fucking around. I kept redesigning them. I kept trying new things. And there was like a video sales letter funnel. So I would have the video at the top, the headline, subheadline, the header package, what I talked about earlier, subheadline underneath, click this to learn more. That's where I learned that CTAs too high can be really ineffective and can crush conversions. So what I did then was I redesigned it. I put the headline on the left, and it was headline, bullets, and then form fill on the right. And it was a form fill because it was an opt-in, and they got a free thing. They got this like email talking about, whatever this unique mechanism was and why they should invest. That worked really, really well, and it took our conversions from 3% to 12%, which is 4 times the industry average, and it's continuing to climb. Those conversion principles, like the above the fold section, needs to be amazing. So above the fold is when someone first clicks over, whether on their computer or their iPhone or their phone, it's that first section that pulls up. You need to optimize that for mobile and for desktop. People like Justin know how to do this, but it needs to be done. And when you really optimize for above the fold, you're going to get the best bang for your buck on your ads, which is critical. The second principle I'm going to jump on in the funnel design is under-designed versus over-designed. You need to know who your client is. For our investing clients, an under-designed funnel that's more simple and leverages a lot of white space actually does better than an over-designed funnel that has a lot of graphics and a lot of animations and things like that. Because you need to know who they are and what they're looking for. But also, you have to remember that over-designing funnels, every element that you add to a funnel that requires like an animation or things like that starts to slow down page loading speed. And page loading speed is like, in my opinion, one of the most underestimated things that really matters. A slow page load fucks your conversions. Like there's nothing worse than a slow page loading speed. So make sure that your page loading speed is top notch, is good. And then picking the over designed versus under designed is going to depend on your demographic, who you're targeting, what their age group is, what they're looking for, what the most, like if they're mostly visiting from desktop versus mobile or mobile versus desktop, that's going to play an important role in it. And that wraps up funnel design. So now we're going to go to funnel building. Funnel building is really important that you choose the right software or the right platform or the right service. So a lot of people get really stuck on like ClickFunnels, and ClickFunnels recently has been just absolutely shitting the bed. And we see super high CPMs on any funnels that people design in ClickFunnels for the sole purpose. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happened since Russell came out with CF 2.0, but for some reason, like I have gone so far away from CF 2.0 or ClickFunnels 1 because the backend integrations don't fit themselves well to what we do. And the volume of traffic we pump through means we have to use ActiveCampaign and Zapier and all these bolt-on integrations. And that just becomes a clusterfuck. The one thing I like about ClickFunnels that I haven't found in GHL is they have this feature where when you scroll down on a VSL, the VSL will come into the right corner of the screen and scrolls with you and continues playing so you can continue watching it while you read the rest of the funnel. That's the only thing I like about ClickFunnels, literally the only thing. So I like GHL. GHL allows you to import a lot of the ClickFunnels, which if the original ClickFunnels, not ClickFunnels 2.0. So if you built a bunch of ClickFunnels 2.0, like I have funnels hosted in ClickFunnels and I pay $300 a month for ClickFunnels just because I have a bunch of shit in there and they've been high converting funnels in the past. And I don't know, I have like endowment effect where I'm afraid to let it go. I could probably let it go, but I'm a big fan of GHL. We currently have a client that's running a lead gen offer, but their platform, the company that they used was really familiar with Shopify. So they built it in Shopify and we're having to create a Frankenstein of a combination to meet the actual like needs. So now we're rebuilding everything in GHL. I like GHL because they've done a phenomenal job of being an all-in-one solution, whether they've stolen a bunch of shit from ClickFunnels or whatever. I know there's some stuff going on there. It's way better. It's so much better in my opinion. And like 90% of marketers' opinions, it's the way to go because they have all the automations, they have all the triggers. It's a little buggy. It's gotten way better. And if you used it a year ago and you haven't used it again, it's been a night and day difference. I think the only complaint that I get from every one of my clients is that there's not a dark mode. So if you have a closer team that's spending a lot of time on it, they're looking at a white screen. It's like, okay. And then you can't really rely on like the reporting metrics in GHL. They have some reporting bolt-ons. We use like custom lead distribution and custom lead attribution softwares anyway. Like Looker Studio from Google is a good one, but their reporting metrics can be decent if you plug everything in. They're just not always the best, but it's cool. Like you can plug in Google My Business, you can plug in Twilio. They have like the A2P setup is really easy to send text messages. So picking the right platform is integral to making sure you're set up for success. All right, so now we're going to go into automations and integrations. So you picked your right platform. You probably went with GHL because I just sold you on it's the best. But seriously, it's incredible. So automations and integrations. I like to think of, so how people go into this process of marketing and they treat it very haphazardly. And what I like to do is you really need to map everything out. So there's some things that you need to use. There's some softwares and some platforms you need to sign up for. It can get expensive. You want to limit your cost on like bolted on memberships and things like that. But like Funnelytics is a massive a massive value add. Some people like Guru, whatever it is GERU. I know that's like Michael Kelly's jam. And like I said, Michael Kelly's really, he's a phenomenal digital marketer. And I would highly recommend following along with a lot of his stuff. Like his and I love his brand voice. This is a side note, but if you go into like Facebook and you add Michael Kelly as a friend, don't DM. If you watch this and you go DM Michael Kelly and you told him that you heard about it from my YouTube video, I'm literally going to punch you in the fucking face. Because if you if you DM him trying to sell him something, I'm going to punch you straight in the fucking jaw. Like, that's unacceptable. Dude, that happens to us all the fucking time. And I know that like Michael posts screenshots of this all the time. So if you do that, you're a scumbag because I've told you not to do that. I'm all for cold DMs, but not to the people that I'm recommending, like just to pitch them on some bullshit. So please don't do that. But if you go onto his Facebook, add him as a friend, you could read his post. You'll get a really good idea of his brand voice and like how he tells these narratives. And he tells dude, he wrote a post the other day about his baby pooping his pants or shitting their diaper and like how it exploded up the back and all this stuff. And the vivid imagery that he goes into is just incredible. Like he, in the headline, how he hooks you in, he turned it to an email. I'm on his email list, so I got to see both. And I really appreciate his copy style. It's fun. It's really fun. So he uses Guru. I've tried it because I was on Funnelytics and then I saw him use it and I was like, well, I'll give it a try. I hate Guru. It is not, I just don't like the simplicity of it. It's because it's not super simple, but it's great for tracking. And I know with a lot of his list segmentation stuff, you can build these really cool reporting metrics in it. But I do a lot of mind mapping and I use the shit out of Miro boards and I use my vibe board to draw and I'm always drawing little diagrams. But Funnelytics I like because what I do is I map out my funnel with the different pieces of it. And then I track the metrics on the backside to see where my fall-offs are. Is it in a certain email? Is it in a certain whatever? And when you start driving high-volume traffic like we do, it's really critical to know each one of these components. When you go into Funnelytics, you just drag the little pieces over. So you'll drag a landing page, and then you'll drag your sales page, then you'll drag your pop-up or your opt-in. By the way, side note on funnels, I don't use pop-ups because they're always shitty on mobile. And most of your traffic's probably going to be from mobile. So I'm not a fan of pop-ups. I use form fills. I will just embed the form in GHL or embed the survey. GHL surveys are pretty dope. They do a good job of creating quiz funnels. I actually didn't go over quiz funnels or survey funnels in the funnel options because most of the time there's not a massive application for really solid survey funnels. And I see people butcher survey funnels all the time. Done ADHD, I had an issue with stimulants. So I don't use Adderall or anything like that anymore, but I've gone through done ADHD things like workflow and an interesting way to funnel hack people. Funnel hacking is a big thing, but a lot of times when you funnel hack someone from the surface level, you don't capture the essence of what makes the funnel sweet and successful. So you have to watch out for that. But I paid done ADHD knowing I wasn't going to use it so I could get the full experience of the survey. Full experience of the survey funnel. There's ADHD ones are really good. Any TRT clinics are really good on survey funnels. Insurance, survey funnels work really well. And if you can create good survey funnels, what this does is there was a salesman I think it was Breakthrough Advertising where I read this, but it was Breakthrough. And that book is incredible. Apparently there's a PDF version of it you can get somewhere. It's out of print. I paid $447 off Amazon to get this book. It's the most expensive book I've bought to date, but I do appreciate it. It's amazing. It's an amazing read. But a salesman, the top salesman, TV salesman at this tech store, when it was when TVs had knobs on them and they didn't have remotes, he noticed that when someone would go up and turn the knob, they would had a 50% higher. They had a 50% close rate versus someone who didn't touch the knob, and the reason is because they had ownership and investment. So if you can get someone to go through a survey funnel, there's ownership and investment. We use them for solar lead gen, and it works really well. Solar leads are kind of like a weird, that if you're not experienced in them, I wouldn't touch them. If you want to get into solar lead gen, hit me up and I'll connect you with our media buyer in that space. His name is Ryan Davis. He's a fucking beast. And he'll teach you some of the tricks, or he might not. I don't know. He does. No one in this video, by the way, knows that I'm telling you about them. So don't be surprised if they're like, what are you talking about? I might tell them. I might forget. I don't know. But I've been just brain dumping a lot of names of people. So he may help you. He might not. But I love Ryan. He's a great guy. And here's the trick with getting mentors. Like, people think that they should just be able to reach out to a mentor and just get on a call with them. Like, I know, like, Josh Snow, right? People think that they should just DM Josh, and Josh, out of the goodness of his heart, should jump on a fucking call with him. The reason most of us don't do that is because people don't value the free time that we give them. The crazy thing is, like, we love helping people, but we only love helping people when they actually put it into action. Like, I know a lot of people from this video are not going to use what I say, but I know some of you guys are going to take like, you're probably sitting there taking notes, copious amount of notes. Like, this video was literally made because Alex Hansen, he always asks me a lot of questions on my marketing, and I wanted to give him a literal, proper, thorough explanation. And I know Alex will take everything and implement the shit out of it. So, like, this video is for Alex, but now it's for everyone. But I wanted to just give a really deep dive. But for the 10%, the 20%, 30% of people that will actually implement every word that I say, you'll be really successful and a lot faster. And especially this piece. So if you go to these mentors, like, if you hit up Josh and you're like, yo, can I buy an hour of your time? Whatever Josh charges you, you will get tenfold the value. If you hit up Ryan Davis and you're like, I want to get into solar lead gen, can I pay you $1,000 for an hour? He will transform the way you buy media in solar. If you hit up any of these guys, Justin Harwood, hey dude, let me pay you $1,000, like, to give you an hour. You think that's a lot of money until you realize how much it compresses your time into. So, like, when you go to mentors, offer to pay them. Use Intro. It has been a phenomenal resource where you can just pay people to, like, buy their time, and you get like an hour of their time, and it's super simple on scheduling. I would definitely hit up people in your network, be like, hey, how can I reach out to this guy? I want to pay for some of his time. Then they'll actually introduce you, because you're actually going to provide value to that person in the form of compensation. It is a transactional relationship. Like, who cares? It should be. But it's a good way for guys like me to be able to help guys that are learning get knowledge quickly. So that was a side note, but back to Funnelytics. Map it all out. Go through each step of your email sequence, your SMS sequences, all your event triggers, because when you go and build this into GHL, it's so much easier to know your wait times. And I map my shit out to a T. Like, I put in the wait time, I put in the automation triggers, I put in conditional logic, I put in everything. Because 90% of the time I don't build my own automations. I do sometimes. Like, I just built one for this SETC offer, and I spent 6 hours building over 100 automations. And I wrote every single email. I put in every single custom value. I put in every single link. I put in every form fill. I put in every piece of conditional logic. I put in everything. And it's extremely valuable to have that knowledge, because we were able to get that offer launched in 10 days. And within the first day of launch, we spent $163 on our ads. We have 2 people in a call center. We generated 48 prelim applications that converted into 13 push-through applications, which converted into 1 already approval. We're waiting on a few more approvals. And I think that 1 approval that we got generated $3,000 in revenue for us. So we, like, got a 30x ROAS. Again, not typical results, but it was really cool. And we were able to launch this offer in 10 days with the team that we have, because I did a shit ton of the legwork. I did the UGC. I did all the stuff. Like, you know, we had some partners like Wayne Sheriff's helped me a lot. He was phenomenal on the sales side and helping with the call center, because I've never built a call center, but I did learn a lot. And so when you go through this Funnelytics, map it out in detail, because then when you go to build your automations, you build them in a way that's really easy. What I like to do when I build my automations, and this is a trick to stay really organized, is by using folders. So use folders to keep each one of your automations very organized, and then use a numbering system. So like 01 dot title. And I learned this from people I paid to build my funnels, but it puts them in a hierarchy so you can follow the steps of each sequence. So I build my automations in Funnelytics, and I do my funnel map in Funnelytics, or like some people use Guru. And then I go into GHL, and then I build them all in there. I don't I don't put any of the information in there. I just build the structure. Then I write the copy for each piece. And then I take the copy and I copy and paste it. And a trick in GHL is if you paste from Google Docs into GHL, you get a 1.38 line spacing, which is too wide. So I used to go back through and I would delete all the like extraneous spaces in between it, and it would take me a really long time to build automations. Then I realized if you highlight everything and you click the line spacing and you change it from 1.38, which is going to be the standard from Google Docs, to 1, it's going to give you even spacing. Use custom merge tags. You click the little tag button, it gives you the custom, the custom value. That's really helpful. Make sure all your custom values are linked appropriately, because there's nothing worse than an email going out that says like contact first name and it doesn't say their first name, right? So make sure all your form fields match, make sure all the conditional logic matches. And then a big thing that's going on that's happened this year has been the A2P process. So A2P, if you aren't familiar with it, A2P is the process where you have to get approved to be able to send text messages to the customers, like to send SMSs. GHL requires this before you can even send internal SMS notifications. I don't know how to do A2P, but Justin Harwood or Andrew Sabatino, both of those guys can help you learn the process. Pay them for a little bit of their time. They'll help you learn it. You have to have like the EIN, the business address, disclaimers, privacy policies. Another big thing with funnel building is you always need privacy policies and terms and conditions. I think it's like termly.io or Termly. Look up Termly and you can generate it. Justin also has a snapshot you can import in GHL, which we called our legal snapshot, and it has what you need, but then you can link and pre-fill. You will need all of that, and Facebook actually rewards you for having that in your funnel. If people are going to be doing any merchant processing, you're going to need to have terms and conditions in there anyway. So don't look like an idiot. Have it done beforehand. Catch it on the front end, because asking a client for their terms and conditions always results back into you doing it last minute, pre-launch, and then they're stressed out and they think that you should have known something and you didn't have it in your launch checklist. So then it's like it just looks bad on you, and then you end up doing it anyway. Hit up Justin or use Termly or do whatever. And get that, like, make sure you get that in your funnel footers. That's super important. And I think you like have to legally have it now. So that's a little bit about the automations and the sequences. Like I want to say there's a one size fits all for automations, but there's not. Like GHL has a lot of recipes that are really good. Everyone kind of builds them in their own unique way. I use a lot of tags and a lot of conditional logic, which makes my automations a little bit more complex in the sense of building it, but it's been hyper effective in how they're structured and organized, because if my automations can do a lot of the lifting, then my setters and closers don't have to do as much lifting. So then I want to go into heat maps. So heat maps are undervalued and highly effective. I used to use Crazy Egg, and they changed their UX and UI on it, and I don't like Crazy Egg anymore. So I started using Hotjar. And I will tell you, I'm not crazy about Hotjar, but I do use it. And it's been the most effective for me recently. What a heat map is there's a couple different things that it'll show you, but basically it records user activity on your funnel, even at low volume, which is nice. And you can pull that heat map, like you go in and you look at your heat map, and what it does is it shows you, the first thing I look at is scroll. So it shows you how many people are scrolling to the bottom of your page. So usually you're going to have pretty big drop-offs. And what that does is it tells you where your copy is failing. Most people think it's just, oh, they have a short attention span or they got distracted. No, you probably didn't just hold them very long. So reevaluate and restructure where you have high drop-off rates. And we're going to go into tracking in a few minutes, but if you use Google Analytics, you can look at bounce rates. And I actually like to use SimilarWeb, and I look at other industries' bounce rates. So if I'm running an insurance funnel, I'm going to look at other insurance. If I'm running a home funnel, like for home warranties or, construction, I look at those bounce rates. If I'm running Ozempic, then I look at an Ozempic bounce rate, right? So look at industry standard bounce rates so you get an idea of how many pages people are going to. And like how long they're staying on funnels. Honestly, like one of the things that you'll see on SimilarWeb is you'll see how many pages people are clicking through, which can have higher hold times on user attention. It doesn't mean it's effective just because there's more fucking links for people to filter through. It just means they're using more pages per session. But Bounce rates are going to be your single first like point of, impression that you want to look at and examine. That's going to tell you a lot about your above the fold. You really want to get your bounce rates as low as possible. I'm sure there's industry standard benchmarks. I just continually iterate until my bounce rate is low and my conversion is higher than I think it could be. And that's when I stop fucking around with my split tests and stuff. But I mean, I will literally rebuild funnels myself. I'll duplicate them, I'll rebuild them until I get the bounce rates that I want and the above the fold or in click through rates or, opt-ins, whatever the unique mechanism I'm looking for until I get it to where I want. So I like to say that you should be shooting on lead gen. Industry average is like 3% opt-ins. I like to shoot for 10%. On low ticket items, I like to see like my gold fucking standard is 15% of people actually make it through the purchase process on the first low ticket item. If I'm at 10%, I'm happy. So 10 to 15% is good. These are just a couple like average benchmarks. You can probably get more research done on it now with ChatGPT. Like I will ask ChatGPT a lot of questions about this because it'll just crawl the interwebs and tell me exactly what I need to know. So that's effective, right? That's super helpful. But when you look at heat maps, the first thing I do is I look at scroll. And then what I do is I look at button clicks. So that's another like overlay. And you see where people are clicking. Are they clicking on my FAQs? Are my FAQs too high? Are they dropping off? Like, are they not reaching the bottom of the page because they're clicking a shit ton on a certain call to action and clicking through? That can be a good thing. But then if you see a high click-through rate and then you see a high drop-off rate on the next page, maybe you need them to click lower. So you need to remove that, or you need to move that CTA down. Don't be afraid to move your calls to action down. A lot of people just litter their landing pages with calls to action, which I do agree with. And like Alan Slotanic talks about this, but you do need to have copy that conveys the point enough where they will get far enough to learn what you need them to learn to become aware enough to make a purchasing decision. So make sure your copy does a good job of that. But heat maps are really important, like really important. I can't express that enough. I put a heat map on every one of my landing pages. And then you want to go into your tracking, right? So Meta, obviously you need to have all your pixel for whatever platform you're doing. You got to put your pixel in there. You got to make sure your API or your integrations and your conversion events are set up. My media buyer, Daniel, can help you with any of that. If you have questions, again, it's like you got to pay these people for their time because they're getting paid for their time. So their time's valuable. But tracking, a couple of my favorite tracking software, like you got to have Google Analytics on there. Sometimes you have to have Google Tag Manager. It kind of depends. We don't use Google Tag Manager a ton. We do use it when we can't get the right conversion events to fire. Like if we're running, like for that lead gen offer we're running on Shopify right now, we're having to put in GTM, Google Tag Manager, to trigger our events so we can build our retargeting on the back end. Hyros is really good for, I like Hyros for lead gen and I like Triple Whale for e-commerce. Again, I don't do much e-commerce, but I do know like Triple Whale's gold standard. I have used it. It's a good tracking software. The reason tracking like that is so important is because you want to feed the data back to Facebook in a way that converts the, like, especially in lead gen, you're converting offline events. So you want to optimize for offline events. The one thing I will say, Ryan Davis told me this the other day. This was a new learning for me, that for lead gen, it takes 50 events every 7 days on a 7-day attribution window in Facebook to optimize for that event, which means you need to be driving high enough traffic to make that happen. Hyros is expensive, and if you're not driving the amount of offline conversions that you actually want to see, sometimes you don't necessarily need to push it. So that's an important thing to know, right? Those are a couple like tracking softwares that I think are really, really important. And then another like integration that's really important, or another thing to continuously look at is Pingdom. That's going to look at your page load speed. You want your page load speed to be absolutely as fast as possible. What Pingdom is going to do is it's going to give you a report, and generally your funnel builder isn't going to know how to optimize for load speed, and you probably don't either. I had to learn it back in the day when I was building Shopify websites for myself, or actually really got good at it on WordPress, but I had to learn a lot of back-end coding and like compression and all these different, like it was kind of a nightmare to learn. But a hack for this is run it through Pingdom, download the report, take the report to Upwork, find someone that can optimize loading speed without too much image compression, and make sure you do that. One of the biggest things is like never host your videos directly in your landing page because it's going to slow down your page loading speed. So there's a ton of different ways to optimize for page load. It's a lot of technical shit and you can break things really easily. So you want to hire someone off of Upwork. You can probably do it for like $100 and they'll go in and fix everything and make it load way faster. So you get much higher conversions. But the last piece I want to talk about in funnel building is split testing. You always need to be running a split test all the time. Now, some people get crazy and they use like Visual Web Optimizer, VWO, to split test like 150 variables. I only do that when we get to really high volume. And I'm talking like, 10,000 page visits a day, something like that. Because every bit of your information needs to be statistically significant. And every time you bolt on a software like HighRose or VWO, it gets expensive. And you want to optimize for some of the other services that you really do need, like Vimeo. Like Vimeo is good for video tracking because you can see drop-off rates. So Vidlytics is actually pretty cool because you can do pop-ups in video opt-ins, which is a unique thing to do. I think it's called Vidlytics or something like that. Just make sure that if you do buy it, you like pay to have all the branding removed because it looks super shitty if you have this like bright blue bar and all these things. But that's a unique thing. So you always want to be split testing. I start split testing headlines, and generally just by split testing headlines continuously, you're going to get enough improvement to not have to worry about much else. The other thing I split test often is the background color. So I always split test like color, like if it's a dark background versus a light background. Almost every time my light backgrounds convert higher than my dark backgrounds. I'm not 100% sure why, but they just do. So always split test. Again, generally in GHL, you can run you can do a split test, just an A/B, but when you split test, only test one variable unless you get into like Visual Web Optimizer. Google has one that you can get really granular on, but all these things start to require a lot of time and attention for like, you start to get low margin on return. And that wraps up the whole funnel building process. So hopefully like you're well on your way through this entire process. And now we're going to kind of get to like creative output, media buying, and some of the actually how you're going to drive the traffic. So we have made it through a shit ton so far. And now what we're going to go into is ad building and media buying. And then we're going to go into media buying, tracking, and retargeting. And then we're going to wrap up with sales, because even though sales seems like a separate component, it's vertically integrated into your marketing stack. So it becomes really important. And I actually train most of my clients' sales teams. Sometimes I do it for an additional fee. Sometimes I do it for free. But if they're not converting, then they're telling their boss that they're getting shitty leads. And then they're telling me that I'm getting them shitty leads. And half the time that's not true. They just don't know how to close these leads because they've never closed cold traffic. So media buying and ad building. The first thing that I do is, and I learned this from Josh Snow, I creative hack. So I use Pippi Ads. Pippi Ads is like the best. There is like AdSpy or Power AdSpy. If you go to ToolSurf, you can get access to these for a little bit cheaper because it does like this group buy. I don't know. I don't think it's like super legal. I think it's like more of a black hat thing, but I guess, whatever. He gave you the resource. Hopefully it's not an issue. But Power AdSpy and AdSpy have really shitty UX and UI. There's like, for some reason, every kind of hacking system for TikTok is like really good UX UI, like Calodata. Josh introduced me to that for TikTok Shop. That's phenomenal. Pippi Ads is phenomenal for TikTok. But what you do is you go in and you'll search. So like, let's say that I'm running an ERC offer, right? I know ERC's, I think it's over, but let's just say I'm running ERC offers. I go into Pippi Ads, I sign up, I search in the search bar ERC, and then I filter by ad impressions, and then I make sure most of the ads that we run are US based only because it's like a government program or, investors or whatever. We run a lot of our shit domestically. So you'll want to filter by geography. You want to pick US because if you start getting like China and there's a totally different market, like marketing to Asian cultures is radically different. Marketing in Singapore is radically different. Every one of these dialects is really unique. And actually, I recently read a book called Alchemy by Rory Sutherland, where he talks about like European, Dutch, Asian, all the different cultures, how they communicate. It could be important. Like Dutch people are really blunt. Europeans like to skirt around issues, so they're a little bit more politically correct. But using colloquialisms that we use in America in certain other cultures cannot convert as well. And it's important to understand who you're talking to, right? Because you want to meet people where they're at. So I use Pippi ads, and then what I'll do is I'll form a collection for whatever the offer that I'm running is, and I'll save these things to the collection. And then what I do is I download the videos, and then I upload them into Rev, and I look at the transcripts. I download the transcripts, and I do my little highlighter trick where I break out the sections, and then I will use that to create my user-generated content scripts, and I understand like what type of content is converting. The reason I look at Pippi ads for TikTok, even though like I'm running like most of our traffic, I'd say 80% of our traffic's on Meta, is because it gives me good data, and I love their UX and UI. So it's really simple to use. It's really easy to filter. Like the filter process for Power Ad Spy, the filter process for a lot of these other like ad tools just aren't great. And so it's really hard to get any like actual good information. But if you know someone that's crushing it with an offer, or you know there are people that are doing really good in your space, you can go to the Facebook ads library. You can search their name and find it. And if it doesn't pull up that way, one of the other ways you can do is if you know the page that they're running it on, you can go to the page. Like let's say, I was looking up some dating offers the other day. So Michael Sartain, right? Men of Action. His is like how to build high status networks so that you can network with high value women. So you're perceived as high value, so you can get girls, and they have some other things in there. But you go to his page, then you go into the About section on Facebook. Now you have to make sure you're going to their business page. And a lot of times, most of these guys have several business pages. So even though if you don't see it on the first, you'll have to keep searching until you find it. You go to the About section, then you look for page transparency. And then it'll tell you if this user is running ads or not. If they're not, but you know you've seen an ad, you need to go find the page that they're running the ad from. And then when you go there, you'll click page transparency. You'll see, oh, they're running ads, view ad library, and then you can see their ad library. A good rule of thumb is that people aren't going to continuously lose money on ads. So if they have a long running ad, it's a good idea that it's a pretty good ad. Watch the ad, consume the content, understand what's working. And that gives you an idea of what creatives are working in the space and how they need to look, how they need to feel, how they need to be. But that's kind of the first step, right? And then we go into like the creative portion. So I look at my creative portion in the filter of retargeting. And in the filter of retargeting, I look at it in the awareness section. So first is top of funnel, which is unaware. And then we go to problem aware, then solution aware, then product aware, then most aware. So I use a Miro board and I map out each one of the stages. So top of funnel is just going to be like, static ads actually crush for top of funnel. And if you go to candy.com, KNDY.com, or Candy for Scale or something like that, they actually have a shop where they're selling like a shit ton of Canva templates where you can just generate really high converting, or that you can pull all their high converting stuff. And I use a ton of e-com templates for lead gen, and it still works. Like it works really well. But it's an easy way for me to just bang out a shit ton of ad creatives. So you're gonna like Candy or Candy for Scale or whatever. There's a ton of agencies that will help you on creative output, but a lot of times they're really expensive, but they do generate good creatives. And the reason creatives are so important is over like a few years ago, Facebook was really heavily reliant on like good media buyers that knew the black hat tricks of like triggers to pull. And there are certain triggers to pull and certain things to do. And actually, if you really want to get granular into media buying, Unicorn Innovations, it's like Max Finn and Jeremy Adams. I believe their course, like they sell a course that centers around really good media buying. Those two guys are the OGs. Those guys are fucking geniuses. Like I've had a couple calls with them. And I talk to one of their media buyers every day. They've come in, they've built a ton of really good attribution software. They've done a really good job with all of that. Those guys are fucking phenomenal. And they like, if you really want to learn some of that stuff, you can learn it from them. There's another guy, Chase something. I found one of his courses on media buying that was pretty decent. It was focused on e-com, but I leveraged the same principles to do it in lead gen, and it actually worked really well. But what you find is that recently Facebook's updates have made it really easy for the machine learning and the AI algorithm to pump out high volume of really good media, because like 90% of Facebook ad revenue comes from people that are spending under a certain amount, and that under a certain amount are people not like me. They're like the mom and pops, or they're just the random one-off businesses, or it could be like guys like you. That are just driving traffic, but they've made the machine learning really, really simple. And so what that's done is it's put a heavy burden on the creatives. And creatives, you need a shit ton of creatives to do a really, really good job with like high creative output. And that's where a lot of the weight of media buying is going to rely on. So make sure your creatives are really, really good and really captivating. You need really good headlines. Michael Kelly's taught me some good stuff about creating good creatives recently. He actually helped me do some static image ads that like have converted, have gotten leads for half the price of some of our old ones. Again, phenomenal resource. Love Michael Kelly. But yeah. And then again, like the Unicorn Innovations team, I think they do a little bit of stuff on creative. So they're a great resource. Go through these processes, and then you're going to do your static image ads. And then Josh Snow taught me about user-generated content. User-generated content crushes. User-generated content is you picking up your phone or a client picking up their phone and be like, you'll never believe this new product I found or this new service and like what it did for me and how it transformed my life. Going on Pippi ads, you'll see a lot of that stuff on TikTok. It's light edits. It should look really organic to the platform. The one thing with user-generated content is you need people that are very personable and that are very animated. That helps a lot. What my favorite user-generated content is, and that's converted really well, and I shot some UGC for one of our clients in the investment space, was I use the reel feature in Instagram and I use the green screen. So I'll screenshot something on my phone. I'll put it in the green screen. I'll use that as my background. I'll point to it. I'll talk to it. I'll do whatever. And I use that or I'll scroll, and it just does a great job. Then I download the reel and then I get it edited by a video editor. You can get them on Upwork. They do a good job. Hassan, from, Content Factory or Scale with Video, their team is badass at UGC edits too. They're a little bit like, they're a little bit more involved. So I would only go with them if you're going to be doing a lot of creative output. But like, dude, they fucking crush. So if you're actually looking to scale with creatives, they will do a phenomenal job, and their systems are super dialed in. I love working with that team. Again, like, and with a lot of these resources, it's good to have more than one, right? Like, I don't use Haas when I need the most simple video edits that I can only pay $5 for, because we're not really there right now, but historically, or you can use CapCut, or Opal, like there's a ton of different. I know Ryan Davis, my media buyer for solar, he shoots our UGC for solar, and then he uses, I think, CapCut, and he makes his own UGC. He runs it. It allows us to have high creative output or high volume creative output on the solar side. He knows what to say, what to do. And that's how you're going to start so when you go into the creatives and you go into the buckets, I told you about top of funnel. That's going to usually be the headline from your funnel put on your creatives, or it's going to be talking about like really teaching them about the problem and educating them. Then you go into problem aware. And so when you go into the unaware market, you want to use story secrets and like static images, and you want to use headlines for your funnels, right? That's going to be your best. When you go into problem aware, you're going to want to use benefits and like fears, right? What keeps them up at night and what can they benefit from? When you go into solution aware, use like claims, claims of bigger, better, faster. Use proof, which is social proof, which is case studies, which are other proofs from the market, charts, things like that. When they become product aware, case studies, again, work really well. Reviews, testimonials, all of that work really well in the product aware, which could be testimonials from your client. Then when you go into most aware, you can just use direct ads that are very straightforward, branded search ads, bonuses, and abandoned carts, right? Those kind of all work. And the way that you trigger these is through using conversion events. So you build all this out in your Facebook by triggering by certain breakpoints. Like I use it by breakpoints in videos and by different page views. So if you watch a VSL and they get to like 25%, they're probably like problem aware at this point. If they scroll to a certain point on a page, they're probably problem aware. If they get to 50%, they might start to be solution aware. If they scroll to a certain length in the page, They become solution aware. If they get to like 75%, now you're probably pitching on the product, so they become product aware. If they complete the video aware, they might be most aware. Generally, I only trigger most aware on abandoned carts, on form fills, on surveys, on applications. Then it's just like a reminder they probably got distracted, or maybe they just got disinterested. So I'll drop a little bonus or make something incentivizing. That's kind of like a creative primer. And that'll get you 90% of the way there. The biggest thing with creatives is testing. You got to test, you got to test, you got to test. When we launch a client, even with $100 a day budget, we have 60 static ads created, and we have about 15 video ads created. The way that we do the video ads to get a high creative output is you're going to do like 5 angles with 3 hooks per angles. That gives you 15 videos, and it does it for your video editors at a cheap price because they'll charge per angle. So we pay like $50 an angle or $100 an angle. And then that gives us the 3 hook variations. So you kind of get those for free. But when you go into your Facebook ads manager, one of the things you want to check when you're actually running traffic is hook and hold rates. So hook rates are going to be like, you need your hook rates to be over 30%. That's kind of like the gold standard, or that's just the benchmark that you need to be at. If your hook rate is under 30%, you're going to want to cut that ad and try one of the other hooks. So a lot of times what we see is we'll see a low hook rate and then a high hold rate. That means that not many people are getting hooked, but most people are getting held through the body of the video. So we're going to replace that. We're going to leverage that angle. We're going to double down on it, but now we need to find more hooks so we can pull more people in. Then we're going to make sure our hold rate stays constant. And that's like the 2 metrics that you need to look at in video ads, right? Static ads are more of just like click-through rates. And that's the basis for that. All right, so next we want to go into like the actual next we want to go into the media buying strategy. The first thing we want to talk about is budget. I do not launch campaigns with under $100 a day in budget. And the reason I don't is because I'm not going to get enough data fed back to me for it to be statistically significant over any short period of time. If you're running your own ads, that can be okay. But if you're running ads for a client, they're not going to be getting leads that fast, and they're going to continuously ask you what's going on and what's wrong. So you don't want to launch with under 100 a day. We test for the first 3 to 5 days with $100 a day unless we start to get traction right away. And then we scale up. And the way that we scale our budgets is 10% of the budget. Alan Sultanic tells you to do 10% of the cart value, which in e-com, or if you're selling products or low ticket, that's a really good way to scale. We always do 10% of our budget, which you have to remember that's going to compound, right? So, and then we do it 10% every other day. And if you scale too fast, you can break too many things. And you have to remember that when you scale, everything else scales. Customer support scales, calls scale, problems can scale, broken links can scale. So all those things need to be accounted for when you scale ads, right? A lot of people think that you just scale and it just scales and everything's going to be good and gravy. It's not true. So make sure when you start to scale, you do it in a controlled fashion, because you will see performance fall out. You will see a little bit of drop off and follow through. All right, a couple last things on the budget is when you're testing, the typical thing is that to test your offer thoroughly, you need to spend 10 times what the cart value is. In high ticket, that doesn't work because most of the time, and I mean, it's still the good rule of thumb, but most people don't, if they sell something that's $5,000, they generally don't want to test 50 grand on ad budget to make sure things are working. Keep it in the back of your mind, but they're going to want to see results faster. So when I look at lead flow, I like to see booked calls at about $100 a booked call, right? So if I spend $1,000 and I have no booked call, then something's probably wrong. Now, if you're just launching, you probably need to spend about $2,000 to test, which if you're only running 100 days, that can take 20 days. And that's where clients get frustrated. And I've lost clients because they came to me with a low budget and we didn't have enough time to prove concepts at the spend that we had. In the time that they, it's hard to see cold traffic converting in the first 2 weeks unless you're really good and you really know your shit. And if you followed all my steps, you could get there really fast. But so if you're selling a $5 ebook, you should probably see a conversion at $50. If you see, you just keep that stuff in mind. 10x your cart value is generally your testing budget. That's the good rule of thumb. Then the last budget breakdown is really important. So when we're doing campaign management, we use 80% for proven and we use 20% of our budget for testing. So we have like our campaign structures vary depending on the volume, but let's just say we're running 2 campaigns. Usually we run like significantly more than 2 campaigns, but you have like your winter campaign and then you have your testing campaigns. So 20% of your budget should be allocated to testing at all times. That's testing new angles, that's testing new creatives, that's testing new hooks, that could be testing new landing pages. Then the 80% needs to be going to what's working and what's proven. From there, you can move into like the actual media buying structures and media buying building, right? So generally the way that I do this, and every media buyer has their own strategy, and a lot of times you just kind of have to let them go with their strategy if you hire someone. If you do it yourself, you can follow this method. So what I do is I use my feeder campaign, and my feeder campaign is my winning campaign. So every time that I have a campaign or an ad that's winning, I dupe it and I move it into my feeder campaign, which is my winning campaign. Then I have like my testing campaign, and that's where I continue to run my tests. And then usually I have 3 more campaigns, or 2 to 3 more campaigns. One of them is my broad open campaign, and this is where you get a lot of scale, and I just let it run broad. There's 0 targeting on it. You let it build over time. You kind of let the Facebook algo do its thing. You let it find the right people. You let it test. I run it with an open day budget with a 7-day click attribution with whatever my, then I optimize for whatever the event I'm optimizing for. Then I run another campaign, which is my interest-based campaign. Some people like to, in their ad sets, they will separate the interests out. Like I think Chase Chappell, he does this where he doesn't like to stack audiences. He uses individual audience structures inside of his ad sets. Like he has his interest-based campaign, and then he uses the different audiences so he can check the winners. And when you do this, you want to turn off CBO, which is your campaign budget optimization, because what'll happen is Facebook will automatically feed whichever one's winning first. So your budget isn't distributed evenly across each one of your ad sets. That can be an issue because when you're testing interest-based targets, you want to get a solid distribution across if you run Chase Chappell's model. I have started to go more the Alan Sultanic model where I do interest stacking. So I stack all my interests. Like I'll do entrepreneurs, I'll do authors, I'll do whatever, self-help, so like a common stack for us could be Tony Robbins, Ray Dalio, finance, entrepreneurship, business owners, and I stack my interests because I'm not as concerned about which interest is performing when in reality, like I can just stack them all and just get value from all of them, right? That's how I stack my interests. But I run the 2 campaigns separately. So I run my campaign budget, or I run my broad, which has my CBO on campaign budget optimization. I think it's called something different now, but that distributes my budget evenly across my ad sets to my winner, or doesn't distribute it evenly to my winners. It just targets my winners and runs with it. Facebook algo does its thing. And it just runs, right? Then in my interest, I turn my CBO off and I run my interest stacks. And then in there, I use my ad sets. And I test and test and test. And the cool thing with interest-based targeting, especially if you're running it for a client, is you're going to get results faster. They're just going to be more expensive. So whenever you filter any interests or age or demographic or location, it's always going to be more expensive, right? Now, I will say, even on my broad budgets or even on my broad campaigns, I will select the countries that I want to run in. If you're running nationally and you're selling like a low ticket book offer, you want to target primary countries like Norway, Sweden, Europe, Australia, North America, Canada, South Africa can be a good one. But you just kind of keep that in mind. Like most of these countries do speak English. But if you really want to get optimized, then each one of them is going to need its own like dialect or, its own tone when you approach them. But in general, you don't need to get super granular on that. So that's really the only thing that I will fuck with in my broad campaigns. And that's how I like to test my campaigns. I don't do any of my own media buying right now. I have an internal team that does it, and then we have performance-based contractors that do our media buying. If you do hire a media buyer, it's really good to get them on a performance basis, because the guys that charge you really low retainers generally don't do a good job at all. And if you can incentivize somebody on a profit share, which means you need to have a scalable offer, generally you can get someone that's even better. And that's how, I mean, we get some of the best media buyers that are out there, and we just do it on a performance base. So the last piece I want to get into in media buying structure is actually two last pieces. I want to get into naming conventions and affiliates. So naming conventions are really important, especially if you're running it for a client, because you look like an idiot if you don't do your naming conventions right. There's a ton of different ways to do naming conventions. You can look it up, but create name templates. That'll save you a lot of time. And it's just an easy way to keep track of your campaigns when you get into like granular reporting, and we're going to go over reporting in a couple minutes. So that is hypercritical. Now, the next piece is affiliates. So if you're running certain lead gen offers, it's good. Like, there are some places that you can go and you can get affiliates to run traffic for you. Affiliates are really unique because they're generally like guys in their basement that don't want to talk to clients. They're fine talking to you, but you can throw an offer up on OfferVault, on Digital Store 24, on Square Dance, on ClickBank. There are people out there that can help you get ranked to the top of those platforms, so you get some of the best media buyers. But a lot of times what you do is when you hire a affiliate, you lose a lot of control over creatives. They're going to say what they want to say. They're going to do what they want to do. So sometimes you have to be careful of that. And we currently aren't using any like affiliates through any of those networks, like publisher networks that I just described. Catalyst is a really good one. If you go through Catalyst, ask for Louis. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's Italian, but it starts with an R. It's like I don't know. It starts with an R. Louis R. He's our account manager. We aren't currently running any active offers with them, but they have a really good attribution software that they built that's custom, which I like because you can track who your affiliates are, who are doing the best. You're not going to know their names, but they have like an affiliate ID, and you can track that. We run a lot of our financial lead gen offers, and so the only time we use affiliates is like if we hire that affiliate specifically, and we do have the final say over their creatives, because I'm not going to get fucked by the SEC or by FINRA. And if you say the wrong thing, like you start to draw a lot of attention through those two entities, and that can be a bad thing for us. And often, like if you're just selling marketing stuff, you got to watch out for your claims through affiliates, because you can get hit by the FTC. And that's like some great guys. Like I know Taylor Welch went through like an FTC thing. They're like it's just like not a good process. And even though they're like being honest, you know, the FTC can just rip some of these pieces apart and cause some heavy fines. So that covers the full like media buying strategy. And hopefully that's enough to get you up and running on your media buying. And actually I want to kind of go a little bit deeper into a couple more media buying things. So the first thing is understanding the platforms. You really have to understand why the platforms exist. So understand Facebook is like a sharing and connection platform. YouTube is a long form content and edutainment. TikTok is an entertainment. Instagram is quick pictures, motivation, stories, whatever. Google is search, right? And then email is email. So understand each one of those attention aggregation platforms and why they exist, because you need your ads to fit natively within inside of them. Now, when we talk about platforms, most people think that they're ready to scale off of one platform and go to the next when they're not, and then they fuck themselves on their offer. So pick a platform and just focus on that platform. Every person will tell you to not be like channel dependent, and I do agree with them. We're not channel dependent right now, but it took a really long time to get there. And if you try to be channel independent too soon, you can really hurt yourself. So like we'll see people start getting like 8 calls booked a day, and they're like, oh, I'm going to scale channels. No, scale the fuck, like shut up. Stay on your channel, dude. Like you can maximize the shit out of one channel. And like now we'll kind of jump in. So in scaling, I told you how we scale our budgets, but the one important thing with scaling is making sure that you're watching out for things that are breaking along the way, and making sure that every audience you have, like your audience size, when you build your audiences in your campaigns, your audience size has to be 800,000 or more. Otherwise you can't scale on Meta and Facebook. So I use Meta for every offer we launch. Meta is our gold standard because that's where we set our KPIs and benchmarks. That's where we know our shit. That's where we stay. Like, then we go to YouTube and Google, but we always stay on Facebook. So the next piece I want to talk about is tracking. Tracking is so important. And like looking at I'm in our Facebook ad account every single day. Now, that is a cautionary tale that you do not make daily decisions. But I do look at our metrics every single day. Even though I'm not doing the media buying, I'm the owner. It all stops with me. I look at our data every single day, but I make decisions on a weekly basis. This is important because you're going to get a lot of knee-jerk reactions out of your emotions. And when you start to look at objective data, you need to get comfortable looking at different data. So the points you need to look at are your CPC, right? Your cost per click, your CPM, your cost per mil, your click-through rates, your hook rates, and your hold rates. Those are the like 5 that I would say you just need to start with. There are other things like you can look at frequency. You can look at some of these other things. A lot of advanced media buyers will tell you other places to look, but those are the places that I look at. So CPC, I like to keep my, cost per click, it's super vertical dependent, right? Like I love to see a $5 cost per click for low ticket offers. But like in our financial offers, generally, like our investment offers, generally we see a CPC between 12 and $30. If we start to see a CPC that like skyrockets past that, something's going on, something's wrong. A lot of times we'll just shut the ad off and then relaunch it. Or there could be something else that's going on, right? Like the creatives could suck and things like that. Then you want to look at your CPM, your cost per mil. So that's for every 1,000 people that see it, like what's the cost? And there are industry standards, but I also just like to look at benchmarks, and I kind of write down the benchmarks of where I'm at to see if I'm falling outside of my targets or whatever, right? Then you're going to want to look at click-through rates. And again, just like ChatGPT, what some of these should be, they are somewhat industry dependent. So your click-through rates, you want as high as possible. Then you got your hook rates. Those should always be above 30%, and then your hold rates. So those are some of the data points that you want to look at. Look at your data and make objective decisions. Do not make decisions based on how you feel an ad is going to go. The only time we've ever done that is Ryan Davis, my solar media buyer, was like, I got a really bad feeling about this campaign. And I told him to push it because it was don't go off feelings. And then we ended up finding some objective data that he could support his hypothesis with, and he was right. So really good media buyers do get gut feelings, but most of them just go off of objective data. That's really important. And like the Unicorn Innovations does a really good job of just being very objective about their data. All right, that finishes media buying now. Now I want to jump into sales. This is the last module. This is really important. This is where a lot of the magic happens. So sales is really important because it's really a nurture process, and it's really just marketing in a one-to-one form. So the first thing I want to talk about is pre-call show up. I learned this from Garrett J. White, actually, and I love this technique. And then I actually saw it happen for the first time from someone else, which was Flow Research Collective, where on pre-call show up, like you have to so you have your automations in place, but I always recommend a personal text, especially if you have an iPhone. To get that blue text message as a confirmation really says something. And we see it increase show up rates high. So our show up rate on our financial offers is 85% right now. Our average that we like to hold at is 70%. And this is why this is so important. The industry average for lead gen is like 30 to 50%. We set our lowest benchmark at 70%. And then we set our average at 85% because our clients follow this process. That makes it way more valuable. That makes our service way more valuable for them. What we do, you take your phone, you record a video, and you say, hey, this is Max Mays. I'm so excited. Hey, John, this is Max. I can't wait to talk to you today. You booked a call to discuss capital raising at 11:30 p.m. Eastern. The Google Meet link is in the calendar invite. Let me know if you have any questions beforehand or if you need to cancel or reschedule. Please be at your computer. Do not be driving during this time because we're going to talk about some things and I'm going to want to show you some of the stuff I put together for you. And I want you to be able to take some notes. So if you can't be a quiet environment or not driving, then let's just reschedule. Right, it's super friendly, but it sets a pre-frame for how the call is going to go, and it's a custom video. Now, not all my clients do the custom videos, and we still see high show up rates, but they do all do a custom outreach. If you want exorbitantly high show up rates, do the video. It is phenomenal. Like, it will change the entire dynamic. Then when they get on the call, first thing I do is I set the frame for the call, right? So, hey man, hey John, appreciate you jumping on this call. I know you want to discuss capital raising for your company. I did a little bit of research on your company. You know, I see you guys are a multifamily fund that's looking to, you know, I don't know how much you're looking to raise, but I went ahead, I checked out like your equity multiples and your, you know, IRRs, your internal rate of returns and your capital lockups, and everything seems pretty cohesive. Maybe I have a concern about your track record, but in reality, I just want to walk through how the call is going to go. So basically in this call, we're going to evaluate whether or not you're a good fit for our fundraising services. We're going to talk about your fund. We're going to make sure you're set up all right on the legal structures. And then we're going to do a deep dive into some of the problems you're facing currently to make sure those are problems we can actually solve. And then I'll tell you how we're going to solve your problems. And I'm not going to hold back the curtain. I'm going to tell you exactly how we're going to solve it step by step. And then we'll jump into pricing because I know you're curious about that. And I like to be very upfront and transparent about our pricing. Does that sound good? Yeah, it sounds good. What I've done is I've set the tone of the call. I'm in control. I'm in the driver's seat. We're following my process because a lot of times what happens is people get on the call, they know they're being sold, and they say, "Hey, let's cut to it. How much is it? Right? What do you do?" Anytime someone does that, I say, "Yeah, like 100%. We'll keep this super concise. You know, we blocked off 45 minutes. We can probably get it done in 15. No worries." But like we have a couple different ways that we serve our clients, and I just need to understand where you're at today so I know how to serve you best. Back in the driver's seat. Then I do my discovery process. And so I have a 6-step sales process, but I mirrored it after what Cole Gordon does. And then I put some of the stuff that I learned from William Lamb in his Sales God training. So there's some NLP stuff that I do. I'm not going to go deep into that right now because if you try to implement it and you're not effective with it, you sound really fucking dumb. But again, he's a great resource to learn some of this stuff from. So what I do is I go into the discovery process. So I want to know what are you trying to do here? How much are you trying to raise? How much weight are you trying to lose? Like, why do you want to lose this weight? All that stuff, right? I want to know the problem. And then the whole point of this is to get to a root cause analysis. Like, what's the basis of their problem? So what are you trying to do? Okay, cool. We're trying to raise $5 million. All right, well, what have you done in the past? So like, what have you been trying to do, or how successful have you been in the past? Well, we haven't been able to do much. Like, I haven't been able to raise that money, or I haven't been able to lose that weight. Okay, like, tell me more about that, John. Like, what stopped you from doing that? Well, I haven't had the right resources. I haven't had the right infrastructure. I haven't had the right support system. My husband brings cookies home, and I eat the cookies, or whatever. All right, cool. That makes total sense. So like, you're having trouble doing this on your own. You do your active listening, but my discovery process takes 30 minutes of the call. The reason being is like, I really care about the people that I'm working with, and I really do need to make sure I can serve them. And you should be too. Like, these are clients, these are real people. And they have real problems that they need to be solved. But then I want to get into the emotional reason, like the core value reason. So I feel like my husband doesn't value me, or I feel like my fund's going to shut down if I can't raise money, or I feel like a fake if I can't do this, right? That gives you a really good emotional anchor to bolt onto. Now, I used to take a lot of notes. I use Otter AI now. I've also gotten really good at active listening and anchoring different points. And when I actively listen, I communicate back certain points. I don't need as many notes. Cole Gordon has like a free YouTube training, and he gives you his little note sheet, and it is valuable if you're just getting into sales, because you can jot down your little notes, right? So go into that, you go into the discovery process, and then I want to understand, like, okay, cool. Does anybody else need to be on the call? Have you tried? How much have you paid for other services? Got it. I never get into financial qualification questions because generally, like, even on my applications, I don't ask people how much money they have because some people recommend it. I close a lot. I mean, I have a very high close rate, and I am one of the better closers I've ever met. And I do not ask any financial qualification questions, and I've never found a relevant need to. And I close fucking 80, like, I close really high. If someone's a good fit for us, I close 80%. If they're not a good fit, I don't close 80% because I don't close them, and I tell them that. So, and I appreciate that. Like, you need to be honest with people. You need to know if you can actually help them, because if you can't help them, they're going to be a nightmare of a client. So then what I do is, after I do that, I say, okay, cool. So I think we can help you. this is how we can help you. So let me walk you through our process. Does that sound good? Right now, you're starting to build yes momentum. So yes momentum. My theory, or the theory I heard behind yes momentum, or the theory I've developed, I don't know if I'm delusional and I created it myself or if I've heard it somewhere. I know someone talks about yes momentum, the term. I don't know if I've coined my benchmarks and how many yeses I want, but I want 7 yeses. So, all right, cool, John. That sounds really great. You ready to hear more? Like, I think you're a good fit for what we have. Let me share this with you. Yes. Okay, cool. That's number 1. So how we work is, I've had a background in marketing for 10 years. I sell really high ticket services and products. That's why we got into the investment thing. My business partner came to me, a year and a half ago after he sold a $70 million lead generation company and said, hey, we need to get into that space. Crazy, right? He's my age, 31. Man, that is crazy. All right, I got another agreement. Cool. And these are micro contracts, micro agreements. Yeah, I know it's wild. So that's why we got into this space. We've had a ton of success. Like, fundamental track record's been incredible. We know our benchmarks. We know our KPIs. So we know all that. You don't need to worry about that. We'll handle it. And I'll walk you through what those are in a minute. Does that sound good? Yes, it sounds good. Now I'm at number 3, right? Okay, cool. So we do this by leveraging our, digital marketing. So what we call it is digital OPM. My buddy Josh, my business partner, named that. Or at least I think he named it. Digital OPM is digital other people's money. That's what we call our digital fundraising. And basically what we do is we drive ads from social media to a landing page that we build to a calendar appointment, and then your investment relation rep closes. Now, John, like that, I know it sounds wild, doesn't it? Yeah, that sounds wild. Okay, cool. Because most people don't expect we can do that. Yeah. So now I'm at like 4 or 5 yeses. Great. Well, this is our process, and then I walk them through our process. Does that sound good? Yes, or they might have some questions. Answer their questions. Okay, cool. Sounds good. Now, I want to get like one more yes in there, so I'll ask a question that I'm certain I'm going to get a yes for, and then I move into the pitch. So now my pitch is, all right, well, here's our pricing. This is how we lay it out, and then I hold space. And I just wait. And there's a level of confidence that you have to be able to look at someone or look at your Zoom camera and just wait. But you hold space, and this pause is intentional, right? And it creates the tension for them to fill the gap. You create a vacuum, they fill the gap. Now you can handle objections, handle them with respect. Not everybody has to close on the first call. That's a massive misconception. What I do like to have is a secondary follow-up call booked. So, I can go, I'll probably do a deep dive training on like more sales, but the last thing I really want to cover on sales is CRM cleanup. Run all your sales through a CRM and put all the notes in there and assign the task for yourself, and then live and die and breathe by your CRM. I have 6 sales calls a day that I personally handle. I will be handing that off to a closer soon, but I handle them right now because we have a lot of nuance in what we do. And I like to get to know the funds because I have like a fundamental intuition if they're going to be a good client for what we do. So that's the sales process. I have walked you through our entire marketing process. I think it's been just over 3 hours for this whole video. And I know it's a lot of information, but it's going to be so essential. And I mean, if you have a question like, I'm not selling any marketing coaching, I'm not selling consulting, that is not my business model. And that is not what I do. However, if you have questions, I'll probably put a link in here in the comment section or something where you can book a call with me, or you can shoot me a message. I'll probably do a message or whatever it is. There will be a link in the comment or, in the little detail section. Click on the link, and there will be a way. I'll give you a way to get in contact with me. I don't know what you'll need help with. I don't know what the process will look like because this isn't for a product or service. Like I said, Alex Hansen sent me a bunch of DMs. And I was like, well, let me just answer my whole marketing thesis. And I had a couple hours today, or I didn't really, but I made 3 hours to shoot this video. I hope it was extremely valuable. I'll be coming out with more content, breaking out some of the granularities. Drop your comments in here for any questions you have, and I'll go through them personally and make sure that I answer them in a way, or I'll at least review them. And if I can answer them succinctly, I'll answer them succinctly. If I can't, I'm going to be coming out here once a month to shoot long form shit like this to give you guys all the stuff that I know. So I guess follow, like this, do whatever you do on YouTube. And we'll be shooting some more videos. If you have questions, concerns, drop in the comments. If you want to get in contact with me, click the link in the little section. and we will jam on all of that stuff. So I'm super excited to be able to help you guys in any way I can. I'm really excited to be able to shoot this. I think it's going to be super valuable and you'll get a ton of information from it. The biggest thing, the last piece I want to leave you with is every entrepreneur thinks they're a visionary. And I've done this culture index profile, which gives me like, it gives you what your profile is. And I am one of the biggest visionary profiles. It's called a daredevil. I have the highest autonomy. I'm in like the 0.02% of autonomy. And I'm also in like the 0.02% of detail orientation. And I'm not patient. And then they call me like strategically social, whatever the fuck that means. Basically, I only go to social events if I have a reason to go to social events. And generally it's business related. It sounds shallow, fuck it. Whatever, it is what it is. But that's how I operate. So Josh and I were talking about this the other day, and you're like, Josh is a visionary, and I'll just say it, like Josh is rich. Josh is extremely fucking wealthy. This dude is a savant. He's 31 years old. He is one of the smartest people I've ever met, and he impresses everyone that he talks to. Alex Hormozi is rich. Like, these guys are rich so they can be visionaries. You do not deserve to be a visionary until you are extremely rich. And to get there, you have to be an implementer and an executor. So implement your fucking ass off. Do the work that you need to do to build the systems and intellect to understand. I have like the lowest detail orientation, but as you can see in this video, I just freewheeled 3 hours of intense detail, brain dumped it. I run all my projects through ClickUp. We hit deadlines every single fucking day. I do not deliver copy with errors in them. I am hyper detail oriented. Even my emails are super tightened on everything because I understand the value of extreme detail orientation, even though that is not my natural default. Be a radical implementer. If there's one piece of advice I can give to any entrepreneur, it is to be excellent at radical, ruthless execution. And if you do that, your life will change dramatically. Learn how to do that. Learn how to execute. If you have questions about that, like I said, you'll have a little contact form or the comments section of YouTube. Hit me up. For now, I'll actually put this in there. My phone number is 904-553-6900. If I don't check YouTube comments and you have a burning desire or question, I could be shooting myself in the foot giving my phone number on the internet. I think it's already on the internet pretty I think it's on the internet already. So you could probably find it on your own. But it's 904-553-6900. Shoot me a text if you have a burning question, and I'll try to drop you an audio. If the request to get to be too high volume, I'll probably cut this part out of the video. I don't know how much that looks like now, but you have my phone number now. Shoot me a text, or you drop it in the comments, or you can click the link and do the contact. Usually I only give one call to action, but I know there's various modes of communication. I like to meet people where they are, even though this was a free training. So whatever you have, like I said, nothing to sell you, just wanted to provide an immense amount of value. Hopefully this was incredibly valuable. And if you have questions, we'll talk soon.